Yes. Hello, my beautiful friends, and welcome back. We have a jam-packed stream this evening. Democrats now admitting to voter fraud on their registration rolls. Something they said never, ever happens, of course, has happened again. And this time, a Democrat governor is making the admission, and she's being very sneaky about it. So we'll break the whole saga down. We'll take a look at the numbers. We'll take a look at the counter-reported numbers and see exactly what's going on inside and why she's making this announcement now. Then we've got a big, huge deportation win. We've got the Second Circuit Court of Appeals that is now saying that illegal aliens or even non-citizens, even if you're here legally, you can't suddenly race to the courts and claim habeas relief to prevent you from being deported when the government says it's time for you to go. We'll unpack all of this. This is a pro-Palestinian individual who was here. Marco Rubio said time to go, and the deportation proceeding started. Then all of a sudden he sued, and some lower level judge said he gets to stay. We've seen this pattern many times over, including with Kilmar wife beating Abrego Garcia. And so I think this will have some big reverberations. We'll hit the details in the court document that is reverberating across America today. Then we've got a little bit of a fun story. We have a Missouri prosecutor who apparently was sleeping with, allegedly, an illegal alien criminal defendant, and now she's been fired. And so a lot of drama around this. We've got a very bad prosecutor. Don't know about the backdoor situation or what's going on there, but we'll talk about that. See what the latest filing is from the state attorney general that is now booting her out of her position. And then lastly, we've got some COVID updates. Rand Paul released a bunch of new documents showing exactly what Fauci's top advisors were saying behind closed doors. They would come to us in public and say one thing, and then in their little Slack messages say something completely different. And now Rand is exposing it all. And they may, according to their own statements, have had intelligence handlers who were handling everything that they were doing and even had the FBI covering up for them as they were traveling back and forth to China. And so we're jam-packed today. Very glad that you're here and with us. As usual, let's make sure we're coming across loud and clear before we start popping off at the mouth and confirm that we're live. Eureka, it's all working. That means we can go ahead and get started. So let's start with some election news right out the top, right off the top, out in and around the top. Starting right now, Democrats now admitting massive numbers of voter fraud existing on their voter rolls, something they said never ever happened. And if you even talked about it, you were trying to rig the elections, undermine faith in American democracy and more. And now one Democratic governor is getting ahead of, I think, what hopefully is going to be a lot more evidence about this, maybe even an avalanche. It's like a snowball rolling down a mountain. It continues to get bigger and bigger the further it goes. And so now we've got Mikey Sherrill out of New Jersey, and she published this statement that is now reverberating across America. Many Democrat lawyers are having a little anxiety attack today, saying, uh-oh, she's admitting it, and we think this is just the tip of the iceberg. She's not even being completely honest about what she's found. We call this a limited hangout, this concept where you just give a little bit of information out there, kind of put a little bit of, teasers out there for the public to just digest a little bit so that they look the other way. They say, oh, they've looked into their lists and everything is fine over there. But we've got the statement that came down from her, and she also had a full-blown press briefing on this, came out with some other people who were at her side as she was revealing all of this to the New Jerseyans and to the rest of America. And this is a big problem for them because they said that this had never happened. And in her own very statement where she admits that there is fraud, she's also blaming the president for identifying the fraud, saying he's trying to weaponize our elections. It's like, hey, Mikey, you just admitted that it's actually happening. And here's what she said in her press release. We'll listen to a little bit more of her saying this, but I wanted to point a couple things out before she starts rambling through it. Last week, she posted this at the nj.gov website. I learned that a serious software error. Yeah, a software error. in New Jersey's motor vehicle system led to the registration of roughly 6,600 people who indicated that they were not U.S. citizens between June 23 and June 24, before she even came into office. I was not here for this. These individuals answered no when asked on a keypad whether they were a U.S. citizen. Not citizens, got registered, times 6,600. They were applying for driver's licenses and ID cards, and the system registered them anyway. Now, this happened under the previous administration, blames the outgoing guy, also a Democrat, Phil something. And I immediately ordered my chief counsel to launch an investigation to get to the bottom of what occurred. I also ordered the removal of any residents from our voter rolls who were erroneously added just for this 1 year, okay, from 23 to 24. The new administrator that I appointed has begun the process of replacing the vendor responsible for administering the system. And this is really, now we start to ask questions. First of all, what is the real number? Because that's just 1 year of people who are going through the system. How long was this going on? So 6,600 seems like just a small, tiny number relative to everybody else who was going through the system. Was the system only activated for 1 year from June 23 to 24? Was it really a software error? Or as like based Mike Lee says, that doesn't make any sense because software doesn't, or at least shouldn't, register non-citizens to vote, okay, right? There's a person in the process who will actually validate that. People register people to vote. Unless the system is entirely automated and there is no checking going on at all, which of course would create an entirely new problem for them. So who is checking the box? What personnel were in there with this vendor or whatever? And it's always some vendor, okay? It's always some third party. Somebody else was responsible for this. Don't blame us. People register people to vote, not automated software. Now, the fact that this happened with or without software playing a role can neither be ignored by Congress nor dismissed as a simple garden variety computer glitch. It's always this. How many times have we talked about it here? In Georgia, Fulton County, it's administrative error. Oh, it's just user error. Oh, our poll workers are idiots and they didn't know. So the fact is, everything that is being ascribed to just innocent oversight has a root cause, and we need to get to the bottom of it. So we need the Save America Act to stop this from happening. And Harmeet Dillon is also noting that it's very curious because she's suing a bunch of states all around the country to get to the bottom of this. And New Jersey is one of the states that is refusing to allow the DOJ and the Civil Rights Division to check the list and check it twice to find out who's naughty and nice, to help them avoid exactly these errors. And they don't want you to look at the list. This has been a refrain that we've been saying for a long time here. It's all about the lists. So she goes through and she just kind of, cabins this thing off. It's not a big number. It's only 400 people. And this validates what we've talked about here before from the Arizona Maricopa County Recorder, Justin Heap, who said they did a similar analysis. And you can just extrapolate this, okay? So if you've got out of this 1 year, and by the way, this is only people from the numbers, as far as we can tell, that they identified in this 1 year who went through this one particular process. There are many other ways to register to vote. This is automatic registration when you're going and getting a license or an ID card, not people who were going separate and apart from those systems and those processes to actually get this done. So 400 out of 6,600. Then you just extrapolate that out. You do some of your math whiz calculations and you say, how many voters are there in New Jersey? And that number starts to go up dramatically. She says, oh, they were registered as many other types of people. We got Democrats, we got Republicans, we've got unaffiliated voters. And she's taking this very seriously. And we have to thank Trump and the DOJ and this new administration for raising this at all. Otherwise, this would have all been covered up. They would not have wanted to talk about this if they could avoid it. They would have just said, la, 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 fingers in the ears, and we just march forward without checking anything anywhere. Now, she's furious about the lack of transparency shown by those in charge. This failure didn't occur under my watch, but now I'm going to start taking things accountable. And what did we see from Harmeet Dillon and Homeland Security and others when they started to threaten to take the money away, threaten to put them in jail if they're actually facilitating this? Now we're getting what we call shaking the tree. We're starting to see these people come out, I guess we do have a couple on there, so let me just come out and do this limited hangout and explain there's only 6,600 on there. I'm sure there's much more. So we'll listen to a little bit of her, but we also think this is in response to what Markwayne Mullin sent out to them. He said after she posted this, and she posted her full statement on X, Markwayne said, "Hey, Mikey, I appreciate you responding back to our letter. This should have been done a long time ago. Just one illegal vote cancels out the vote of a U.S. citizen. And as we reported last week, you could have as many as 35,000 potential non-citizens registered to vote." She came out with a small 6,600. It's probably many times more than that. "Looking forward to working with you to secure your elections in the future. And we'll see if the investigation continues and what it reveals." But remember, Markwayne sent this back on July 16th. He said, "Hey, Mikey and Secretary Caldwell, the same party that says we're all crazy for calling these things out, we at Homeland," he sent to her, "are responsible for immigration enforcement and for election infrastructure protection. Both of these responsibilities are critical in my mission, and I am writing to make you aware of the concerning results of a recent analysis of your public data that we were able to pass through. Preliminary review of the records revealed that there may be as many as 35,000 non-citizens registered to vote." And again, that's a giant number. That is a huge, huge number. "As an example, we found almost 20,000 19,497 New Jersey registrants for whom the name, date of birth, address, social security number match a literal non-citizen in Homeland's files. The most efficient way to ensure the accuracy of our findings is to actually communicate and work collaboratively on these things. So I hope that you share in the commitment to ensure that only citizens vote in federal elections. One vote cancels one of our votes, and we're responsible for maintaining this and for verifying citizenship. And we can work together to fix all of this. My team is ready to support you. We'll assist you in the process. We'll give you records. We'll allow you to take steps to actually protect your voters. Give us a call. Send us an email, and we'll look forward to collaborating on free and fair elections." Now, of course, they're not all that interested in any of that. And the reason being is because they want more voters who will vote for them. Here's another attorney general out in Little Somalia, aka Minneapolis, Minnesota, who is known as Keith Ellison, the Attorney General Democrat who was really doing everything he could to prevent Don Lemon from getting charged in the church invasion, admitting exactly what they're doing here. They want foreigners to replace the current population. They want them voting, as we saw with, even according to this Democrat governor, Mikey, that 6,600 of them were just waved through. Click good, you're good, click registered, come on in. Now we see that they also want mass naturalizations so that those people will vote for their party. Here's Keith.
There's a whole lot of people who were not 18 years old in the last election. There's a whole lot of people who were not naturalized citizens in the last election. There's a whole lot of people who sat it out because of whatever reason in the last election. But you know what? We're going to get them all this election. And so let me tell you, I used to be the congressperson for the 5th Congressional District. And when I decided to leave that job and become your Attorney General, and thank you for that, by the way, there's a whole...
So as we heard, he's talking about people who were not naturalized citizens who are now going to be naturalized citizens, and then they'll vote for us in order to have their party continue to win. So that's Keith Ellison. And here's a little bit more about how this whole thing went down. She came out today, Mikey Sherrill from New Jersey, explaining the following.
I'm joined today by Lieutenant Governor Caldwell, Acting Chair and Chief Administrator of the Motor Vehicle Commission, Rosalie Johnson. When I came into office 6 months ago, I promised New Jerseyans that my administration would be different.
Yeah.
We'd be open, we'd be direct, and we'd have a culture of accountability in this state. In keeping with my commitment, we are here to share information I learned of a few days ago.
Right.
In June of 2023, nearly 3 years before I became governor, a serious software error in New Jersey's motor vehicle system led to the improper voter registration of what we believe to be roughly 6,600 people in our state.
Error.
When New Jerseyans applied for a driver's license or identification at the MVC, they were asked if they wanted to register to vote. In the case of this error, some individuals indicated that they weren't citizens and weren't eligible to vote, but the software registered them anyway.
The software did?
The error in the software was corrected a year later in June of 2024.
Yeah, interesting. I thought that the software was always perfect. They checked and balanced it, and there was no way that the software was doing something illegal that was uncouth to the sanctity and the integrity of the elections. Turns out that's not actually accurate, is it there?
That is more than 2 years ago. I learned of this last Wednesday, and I immediately ordered my chief counsel to launch a comprehensive investigation. Currently, the Division of Elections is working to ensure anyone who is illegally registered is removed from the voter rolls. Initial analysis shows that fewer than 400 newly registered individuals voted in an election due to this software error. They were registered as Democrats, Republicans, and the majority unaffiliated, and were scattered across the state. But let me be clear. This entire situation is unacceptable.
Yeah, right.
It's unacceptable that the vendor released software with such a glaring error. It's unacceptable that the MVC took a year to get this issue fixed. And it's unacceptable.
Yeah, and again, they would not have fixed it but for the fact that the Trump administration is coming down hard on these people, saying, if you facilitate this, you're on notice. We're going to prosecute you. Harmeet Dillon sent the letters. We read them here. Mark Wayne Mullen is saying we're going to take away your money. And then all of a sudden, oh, somebody finds something, and then they've got some cover. They've got some plausible deniability to say, hey, we've worked on this. Don't arrest us, just like we saw from Adrian Fontes, the secretary in Arizona. The thing that they said was never happening, of course, is happening now. And so they say, oh, wow, we found a little bit of a problem. And so stop looking at us since we're addressing it. Move on, go after somebody else.
That no one in the previous administration brought this to light, demanded accountability, or took action when it happened years ago. For too long, the Trenton playbook has been to avoid tackling and solving tough problems. New Jersey's better than that. And I am working to create a different culture, one where we are both effective and transparent. This failure didn't occur under my watch, but accountability starts now.
Okay, so who was responsible for preventing this? What's the name of the vendor? Who's the person inside the government who was supposed to validate that the systems were working appropriately? Who signed off on it? Who did the random audits to check these things? Who are the people? What are the names? They will never say. It's all just a mistake. They're fixing it. And so it's much ado about nothing. It's only 400 votes as well.
Because the people of New Jersey shouldn't have to wait a year for a problem to get solved, or 2 years to learn it even happened. I'm taking immediate action to make sure something like this doesn't happen again. Administrator Johnson has already started the process to replace the vendor behind the error. We're sending letters to the people impacted by this error, and we will remove anyone from the voter rolls who may have improperly registered. And my team is taking a hard look at the process failures that occurred under the previous administration
A Democrat.
and the guardrails we can put down for the future.
Who should be indicted?
On day one, I appointed our state's first ever chief operating officer to take on the bureaucracy and brokenness within state government. She and her team are focused on fixing the fundamentals so it doesn't take a year to find a software error and fix it, because New Jerseyans deserve accountable government. I know how important public service is, and I've worked to serve this country most of my life. I've taken several oaths to support and defend our Constitution as a Navy pilot, a federal prosecutor, and an elected official. Election integrity is core to that oath. It's my duty as governor to make sure our elections are free, fair, and secure.
So are you going to work
In
with
the months
Homeland
ahead,
or not?
I'll keep working with our election officials, local, county, and state, to do just that.
So not the feds.
As the Trump
Got it.
administration tries to weaponize elections for political gain.
Oh, really? Trump's weaponizing the elections by calling out voter fraud? You mean the very voter fraud that you literally just admitted to 2 minutes ago, you psychopath? she is now acknowledging the fact that Trump has been completely vindicated. He said we need the SAVE Act. His DOJ has been suing your people to get access to the list. You've been fighting tooth and nail to prevent that from happening. So the fact that you'll then turn around and come out and blame him for being absolutely right is insane. And the fact that they can lob those two statements together within minutes of each other shows just how contemptible these people are.
I am ensuring that we protect our elections.
No, he is.
Let me be clear. Donald Trump has zero credibility on the issue of election integrity.
This whole press briefing is vindicating his accuracy in the claims and the statements that he's made. These people are lunatics.
For the past 10 years, he's cried wolf and peddled bizarre conspiracy theories.
There's a wolf right in your election rolls. You have a vendor, somebody that you're blaming for these mistakes. It's ultimately the government's responsibility to ensure that the vendors are complying with the law, and they're not. These people are just wild. So she can't actually just admit the truth. She has to then drape the whole thing in some anti-Trump lunacy in order to satiate the people on her side, because she realizes the reason why she has to go so aggressively against the president is because she realizes he is 100% right. This whole press conference, she brought out these two other goobers with her to stand on her sides to explain how serious this is, and then all of a sudden says Trump was wrong in the very same breath.
About fraud with no evidence. I saw the consequences of Trump's lies on January 6th. I was in the—
Yeah, a Fedsurrection, we got it. So they bring out a bunch of other people. Then this guy talks for a little bit. Let's listen to some of him.
To ensure that no ineligible voters are left on the rolls. The focus of this administration has always been ardently protecting and defending New Jersey's elections and the eligible voters participating in them. As Secretary of State, I remain in close contact with county and local election officials.
Yeah, so they're not going to work with the feds at all. Let's see if there were any questions here, because they did get a couple.
We have no evidence at this time that any elections were swayed.
Okay, so
can I ask about the allegation from Homeland Security is that New Jersey has about 35,000.
are there more?
Citizens on the roll.
Homeland says 35,000 is the question.
Can you give us any indication of whether you've researched that, or whether that's a hooked up number, or are you investigating it currently?
These two things seem to be unrelated. So last Wednesday was when I first heard about this. I immediately launched an investigation.
Yeah, right.
And this is what we've uncovered so far, and the investigation continues. We received a letter after Trump's speech that there were this 35,000 from DHS potentially. So we have asked them for any evidence of this, where they got that number, who this is. We've received nothing back yet.
I just read you the letter, okay? He said that they got your public data and they validated it against the SAVE database to confirm that the people who are on your rolls don't match citizens. In fact, they match non-citizens. And now you're also indicating that your own internal due diligence has found a software glitch, which of course is not a software glitch at all. It is active interference with the election. Somebody's on the other end of the system, or if they're not on the other end of the system, if it is that automated, then that person is, whoever made the decision to enable that system is committing mass fraud, because the laws say you cannot have non-citizens voting in our elections. So if it's automatic, then that's a problem. If it's not automatic, then that's a problem. And so they're totally screwed both ways. But this is what you get. It's gaslighting, and it's cover up and subterfuge on the truth. They will never give Trump credit for any of this, but this is very damning for them. I think this is more significant than they're making it out to be. Normally, their entire defense operation is to never admit anything, ever. She brings up January 6th. It's like that scene out of Terminator 2 when the T-1000 falls down into the liquid magma and then starts to evaporate, and he turns into all these different forms from all the characters in the movie, and he tries to like get out by recreating himself in all these different permutations. She's trying that. saying, Trump's a boogeyman. He was crying wolf. It's January 6th. There's no evidence. It's all conspiracy theory. Turns out she's admitting and cracking the facade just a little bit. And when that happens, you'll see the rest of it start to come unbundled. And so that's why this is such a problem for them. So much more will be revealed on this. They are total scammers. They can't even accept responsibility when they have to accept responsibility. They come out and they say it's a small number. Where's Mark Wayne Mullen getting all of the other information? Well, he just explained that, okay? We just saw that right here. He said they got your public database and they matched it against the federal database, and they've got 35,000 people who are on there. So why don't you go look into that? But they're not going to want to do that. It's a limited hangout. They're perfectly fine with a huge number of non-citizens on the voter rolls, perfectly happy to have mass voter registration so that there are mass ballots all shipped out and they can harvest them. They can take legitimate ballots that are not theirs, get multiple duplicate, triplicate, quadruplicate votes, turn those back in and rig elections. And this is a big fat number. And I suspect this is happening in many other states, which is why many other blue states don't want to cooperate with the DOJ under federal law to give them access to their list. They'd rather it just be one gigantic mess that they can exploit because, as we know, the grift is in the gray area. And one assemblyman out there in New Jersey said the following. He said, today, Governor Sherrill admitted knowing about illegals registered to vote, quote, due to a software error. No one's buying it. And only divulged it when caught red-handed by Homeland Security. They're all trying to get ahead of it. One of the darkest days in the state election history, whether the initial failures happened during her tenure or not. This totally ruins any credibility as she tries to minimize the size and the scope of this massive failure. It is a structural failure. And she just goes back to 2023. How long was this going on? At this point, public trust is completely broken, and the only option is to let the federal government see the voter rolls so they can determine just how deep this goes. I will, however, congratulate the governor on her inspiring commitment to still try and take a swipe at President Trump during one of the state's biggest embarrassments. To blame him for this, saying he made it all up, he's not been completely vindicated, and attack him as she's literally admitting the fraud exists in her own government. Only she could trash the president for having zero credibility while she is literally admitting to major election integrity issues. The duplicity and scumminess of these people is really mind-boggling until you realize they're Democrats. So great statement from him. And here's another statement from a senator, Jim Banks. He's not in New Jersey, but he's over nearby in Indiana. He said, this is crazy. They registered 6,600 non-citizens that they admit to. I'm sure the number is way bigger than that. Could be as high as 35,000, maybe more. This is unacceptable. Only American citizens should be voting in American elections, which is why now more than ever, we must pass the Save America Act to secure our elections. Here is Senator Banks.
Hey, everybody. Breaking news out of New Jersey. The Democrat governor of New Jersey just confirmed moments ago that 6,600 ineligible voters were accidentally added to the voter rolls in their state. I mean, if you think about this, is there a better case ever to make to pass the Save America Act than that? Only Americans should be allowed to vote in American elections, but states like New Jersey, through accidental software issues, allow foreigners to vote in their election. Pass the Save America Act, pass it now, secure our elections. I stand with President Trump. The Senate should put it on the floor and pass it today.
Thank you, Jim Banks, the senator from Indiana. Then Harmeet also came out, and there are elections underway all across America as the primary season comes upon us. She says Americans deserve to have confidence in elections. This civil rights division, which has been suing the blue states like New Jersey, is laser focused on exposing vulnerabilities in American elections to ensure their security and fairness. Here's Harmeet.
have been the ones who question the outcomes of elections involving machines. Hillary Clinton is one, Stacey Abrams is another, Kamala Harris. And so suddenly when it seems like this type of a loosey-goosey system that we currently have benefits them, I think that would be your obvious explanation as to why they're lying to the public and afraid of some election integrity. But this administration will not be shaken by that kind of name calling. And we are laser focused on exposing the vulnerabilities and increasing confidence in our elections. Many Democrats.
And the administration has been completely vindicated. Remember when Maryland also accidentally, because of a glitch with a vendor, sent out 400,000 ballots to the wrong people? Oops. And that, of course, could lead to mass voter disenfranchisement. And it's always a glitch. In Florida, in Georgia, it was a glitch. In Arizona, it was a paper glitch. Oops, people were waiting outside of the line, outside of the polling locations for hours to try to go vote for Kari Lake. But somebody picked the wrong paper size, like you're trying to print on an envelope. Always just oversight, never criminal intent. Of course, we know that is garbage. So Mike Lee also said this is popular everywhere in the country, the SAVE Act, even Democrats, except for Senate Democrats. They've told us why repeatedly, because enforcing citizen-only voting would cost them votes. And the CIA agent called Alyssa Slotkin, who is the senator out of Michigan, I believe, she said the same thing. If we pass the SAVE Act, Democrats are never going to win another election. She's blaming it on women who are, I guess, too stupid to go register if they change their names when they get married. But we know it's not that. It's about them having grift in the gray area. If the system's a big, cumbersome mess and nobody has any oversight over it, they can rig it for themselves. And that's exactly what they're doing. Now they're admitting it. Now the facade is starting to crumble a little bit. And I'm looking forward to more of the people continuing the gaslighting. And as days go by, as years go by, as months go by, we're going to see we're more and more vindicated every day. We all saw what happened in 2020. We've been lectured for years, just like they lectured us during COVID, just like they lectured us during January 6th. They were all crazy conspiracy theorists. Turns out we're all getting vindicated. Democrats are now even admitting it. Here's Base Mike Lee.
It's clear that Congress can fix this problem. We have the authority to do it. So what's the holdup? Well, it certainly isn't the American voter, because the American voter, by a margin of like 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 5, depending on which poll you look at, believes that it's important that people who show up to vote ought to have to prove who they are, and they ought to, at the time they register to vote, to have to establish their citizenship and thus their eligibility to vote in the first place. We're talking about 75 to 80, some as high as 85%, depending on which poll you look at.
Crazy.
Those are Democrat voters and Republican voters alike, all agreeing that this is a problem, that it's a problem that Congress can and should fix. So what is the holdup? Well, it's hard to say what the holdup is, but I can summarize it this way. It's Senate Democrats. The Save America Act is popular literally everywhere in the United States of America, except in this chamber, and except among Democrats in this chamber. Everywhere else, it's a no-brainer. Everywhere else, it's popular. It's only here that they don't want to pass it. Why? Why don't they want to pass it? Well,
they're cheaters.
One could argue that if you benefit from the status quo, you don't want any change to that status quo, especially if you benefit from it in a way that's likely to go away if you change the status quo. These are all fancy ways, Mr. President, nice ways of saying perhaps some of those who are opposed to it might be afraid of what happens if they're not allowed to rely on non-citizen votes, even though federal law flatly prohibits non-citizen voting in U.S. elections. No, that is not a good reason to oppose this. It may be a reason, but it's not a good reason. It's not a valid reason, not a legal, moral, ethical, or constitutional reason.
And if it's illegal to have non-citizens registering to vote, and it is, then how can you say you're taking accountability in your administration, Mikey, when you are not actually identifying the problem? You're just blaming it all on a computer glitch, meaning you're not identifying the root cause of the problem in the first place. It's all just theater, but they had to get ahead of this because the evidence is damning, and now it is all coming out. So here's more from Peter Navarro. He said, with new evidence now released by the White House, Americans' levels of certainty that the 2020 election was stolen have increased across the board. And I feel this across the board. I'm sure you've experienced this too. I get asked about it a lot, in fact. It's one of people's most common questions. How exactly did it work? And we explain it. Support for the Save America Act is now up over 80%. It is important beyond measure to pass this to ensure election integrity, from Peter Navarro, who went to prison for 4 months as a result of Liz Cheney and the fake J6 committee's war on him.
My original question is, in people's minds, do you think going across America is the probability that the 2020 election was stolen? Has that gone up in people's minds because of the evidence they've seen? The answer is unequivocally yes. So it's important beyond measure to pass the Save America Act, and I think there'll be even more support. It's over 80% now. It should go to 90%. I mean, who can object to it other than the radical Democrats who like to mess with our election?
Yeah, and Lisa Murkowski too, because she says rural voters in Alaska can't figure it out. And because a handful of people can't figure it out, and it's a little bit more cumbersome for people who live far away from any location that they could go use to actually validate that they're citizens, nobody anywhere can have election integrity thanks to the naysayers who are actually going against the will of the American people. The whole thing is disgusting. So in Congress, they're motoring forward on the Save America Act. Here's James Comer explaining they need to get this done. The problem is not the House. The problem is the Senate.
I'm like a majority of North Carolinians. I'm ready for Tillis to go back home. But we have to have election integrity. The polling is overwhelming in both parties. Every American expects our votes to be secure. And why in the world there are some states, and that who just happen to be Democrat states, that don't want to require a voter ID, a real ID, to go in and vote? That's preposterous. We do that right here in Kentucky. In fact, every red state requires an ID to vote. The only reason I can think you wouldn't want an ID to vote is if you're creating some type of mischief or cheating. Yeah. So I think the president's doing the best that he can as far as trying to encourage the Senate to do their job. What I think senators and most politicians reply best to are polls, and the polling is overwhelming. Over 90% of Republicans and 80% of Democrats think that you should be required to show proof of citizenship before you can get a ballot to vote in an election. It's not that complicated, and for the life of me, I don't understand why there are so many senators who oppose that. Mm-hmm.
You understand, James. You know it's because if there is a more secure election, the people who are exploiting the current system will not be able to continue their exploits. They'll have to reconfigure their efforts to get reelected, and they don't want anything to jeopardize their power. If you've got the rules of the game such that you win every single chess match because your pieces are all queens, why would you want to limit your ability to have all queens and go back to pawns? And now you've got the same rules everybody else has to play with. So you'll lose the game because you're not a very good chess player and your policies are crap. So very good day. I think that, again, this is a crack in the facade. And the fact that she came out, she gave a full press briefing on this. They talked about this for about 20 minutes with her other goons. She's screaming at Trump in the same press briefing where she's completely validating and vindicating Trump and Harmeet and Markwayne Mullin. All of them just scored a slam dunk today. And now they have to paper over it by saying it's small, it's limited. They'll continue to move the goalposts. But this is different than what they've said before. Largely, it's been there's no voter fraud. Illegals can't register to vote. Software is perfect. No non-citizen would ever register to vote anyways. And it just doesn't happen. Then it slowly starts to happen, but it's not systemic. Now it's just a couple of people and it's not dispositive. Then we get an entire year's worth of people in New Jersey who apparently were doing this because of Movender. And We want accountability, and I think what they've done by actually admitting this now is giving us an opening. Who was responsible for creating that prior system? Who was the vendor? Who was on the government's end who was validating that what the vendor was doing was actually legitimate? Or was there a conspiracy inside the elections department in New Jersey? When did the governor know about it? Maybe the House committee of whatever can go and subpoena them and haul them in to ask questions about this, because it is a much broader and much more extensive problem than they're letting on here, which is why they're trying to pre-butt it. They're trying to get ahead of it, do a very limited hangout, not admit the truth of what went down, but we know there's much more here. Homeland knows there's much more. Harmeet knows there's much more. FBI, with their pallets full of ballots down in Georgia, they know. And so the investigations will continue until election integrity improves. We'll be here to continue to cover it. Thanks for joining as we do. All right, now let's talk about a massive, major win on immigration and deportation. This was a good one. Also, causing some nervousness out there. Massive win out of the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. A lower level judge just got slapped down in a big way. And this has the potential to impact many deportation cases all across the country. We've got many cases that we've covered here where non-citizens, even people lawfully living here, are subjected to deportations. They're identified for removal. First thing they do is they try to get out of the immigration process. They say, this is a violation of my constitutional rights. Even though you're a guest in our nation, you then exit the immigration proceedings and you go sue in a very blue court, like with Judge Zenas and Kilmar wife beating Abrego Garcia, who was trafficking people across Tennessee. They go out and they sue, and they get a leftist judge like Judge Zenas to stop them from getting deported. Okay, another judicial insurgency preventing the operation of law that was enacted by the duly elected president and his administration. Not anymore. That's all coming to a close, presumably once this case catches and spreads around the rest of the circuits. We've got James Percival over from Homeland saying, big win in the Second Circuit today. Congress has sought to solve this district judge mischief in immigration cases for decades, but these judges kept ignoring the law. Congress has said these habeas petitions, by leaving the Article 2 immigration process, which is executed by the executive branch, running over to Article 3 courts, they have been bypassing the law. Literally, Congress said you can't do that. And now the Second Circuit found accordingly. Now, here was a fun comment about this from Senator Eric Schmidt. He said, this guy is now packing his bags. He said, breaking, pro-Hamas 15-year undergrad Mohsen Mandawi will be deported back over to Jordan. The Second Circuit just overruled a judge who had let him back onto the streets. He says, get him out. America is not a taxpayer-funded campus for foreign agitators, and we really shouldn't even have any foreigners in our educational institutions at all. But this guy is one who's now leaving. And how fun is that? 15-year undergrad. Wow, amazing. Almost like he's here just to instigate his ideology inside of our educational institutions. We saw that the Cubans are also facilitating that, funding various group efforts all across the nation, have been doing it for generations, including the George Floyd protest and more, in order to subvert our nation's American values. And so now he's on his way on out of here. And Nick Sorter had a clip here of what these people were doing. They'd go to these college campuses, they do stuff like this, barricading doors, and this is just one incarnation of this. We've seen this percolate multiple times over the years, whether it's anti-war protests, in this case it's Free Palestine protests, it's liberation theology, it's Black Lives Matter protests, it's Occupy Wall Street protests, whatever. Same group of ideologues, different covers over their bodies. And now, no longer going to be allowed to be here. And so we'll hit the highlights of the actual ruling that came down, which I think is going to really shake a lot of these immigration advocates. But the background here is that now today, a court of appeals overturned a 2025 ruling Marco Rubio came out and said, we don't want these people on our campuses, okay? They are here as guests, and if they're going to come and commit protest and commit violence and whatever, even just be obnoxious, we just don't think that you're actually facilitating a good environment for higher education. You're gone. We don't have an obligation to have you here. Madawi, age 35, with several non-citizens who was placed in a deportation proceeding last year. Very mad about Israel, very mad about Gaza. The arrest prompted court challenges because Rubio said, you're gone, afuera, on out of here. Then they sued, of course. Non-citizens come here. We say, hey, come into our house and be a guest. They say, I'm going to sue you and take your bank account, take your wife, and you're going to apologize to me for making me inconvenienced. But today, Tuesday, they just got backhanded. And this also is probably going to be a big problem for Mahmoud Khalil. And the ruling could make it even more difficult for non-citizens that have been detained to get out. They come out and they say, it's my First Amendment privilege and I have rights to do all of this stuff and remain in your nation, even if you don't want us here. Even if the people elected people like Marco Rubio and President Trump to impose new policies, we get to override those by suing in your courts and having some hack judge enable it. This guy was a West Bank-born Columbia University student. He was arrested in April 25, and another judge in Vermont, a guy called Jeffrey Crawford, ordered him released, ruling that he has the same First Amendment free speech as U.S. citizens. Why would that ever be the case? What is the value of citizenship if it's meaningless? When you're a citizen, you have more rights than a non-citizen. That's the whole point. In overturning that ruling, though, they said he didn't even have jurisdiction over the case. You may be sympathetic to the cause, you may not be sympathetic to the cause, but we don't have jurisdiction to hear this case in the first place. And so now, case is gone. We had another similar ruling in the Third Circuit with Khalil. He was also in immigration detention. He's taking this up to the Supreme Court. Now, both of these two different districts are saying you don't have any right to go sue in another Article 3 court, so start packing your bags. And here's how the decision came down. Trump is the person here on the receiving end of the lawsuit. This non-citizen foreign agitator came in and sued and said, I have rights. He then filed a habeas petition. Okay, so just to be clear, immigration proceedings happen under Article 2. The Executive Office of Immigration Review, they process immigration. It is done that way so that we can kind of expedite these things. Got a lot of illegals here, got to get them out, so we got to go quickly. When they have a bad outcome, or when Marco Rubio or others under federal law say this person has been identified as a non-useful individual in this nation, then they run out of the Article 2 courts, they run right over to Article 3, and they sue there. In those courts, they file a habeas petition. They say, I'm being illegally detained, let me out. The lower courts do, and they have let him out. And they get a bunch of ACLU lawyers coming in here to facilitate this. Here's the decision that just got handed down. A host of federal government officials appeal from the lower level Vermont judge. He said, let this dude go. Madawi is a lawful permanent resident. He had challenged his pre-removal detention. He said, I have First Amendment rights in your country. I have due process rights under the Fifth Amendment. There's nothing you can do to me. We conclude, though, that actually he doesn't even have a claim. He needs to go through the other administrative immigration processes, and so he loses, and now he needs to go. Here's more. This case, of course, presents the question whether the lower level district court of Vermont erred by taking jurisdiction over this type of claim in the first place. Law under U.S. Code, Section 1252b9 says the following, quote, no court shall have jurisdiction by habeas corpus or by any other provision of law to review questions of law in fact, including interpretation and application of the Constitution and other statutory provisions that come from a proceeding that has been brought to remove an illegal alien, okay? Lower judge has no jurisdiction over it at all. He skipped over that read. he didn't actually give a crap about the U.S. code. He just said, I'm going to take jurisdiction and find a way to let this guy out and to stop the removal of him from America. We conclude in the Second Circuit that the Vermont judge erred. In immigration matters, our Constitution is clear. The power to regulate immigration, an attribute of sovereignty essential to the preservation of any nation, has been entrusted by the Constitution to the political branches of the federal government. Let's go. Over no conceivable subject is the legislative power of Congress more complete. And Congress gave that power over to the Article 2 provisions, saying here, he is afforded the opportunity to raise his claims after he gets a final order of removal, but he can't file a collateral attack on the removal proceedings themselves. So he can work inside the removal process, but he doesn't get to run out of the process and go sue under an illegal detention law. This case comes before us on appeal of a release order, and wait till you hear about this guy. Guy's a piece of work in addition to being an agitator. What happened is we're now appealing the lower level judge's illegal order. He was detained and placed into removal proceedings, and so he sued. On the day of his arrest, he got lawyers. They filed a habeas petition in a district court, Article 3 court, to literally invalidate Marco Rubio. Marco came out and said, this dude threatens American foreign policy, and so I'm going to remove him. The judge barred the government from targeting these people for removal. The judge said that was protected speech. He has protected speech to come in and advocate for Palestinian rights. And again, it's not even commentary on the actual argument. I don't care what rights they are. If these were Ukrainians, I would have the same objection. If these were Russians or Chinese or Israelis or anybody who came in and said, I have a right to come and agitate and be in your country, and once I'm here as a non-citizen, I have a right to free speech and there's nothing you can do about it, I'd be just as outraged. The district court granted his motion for release, saying Rubio is overruled, and granted his habeas petition, saying he's going to win, saying this dude has First Amendment protected activity and we have to keep him here. He can come here and say and do whatever he wants, even if it's adverse to America. We conclude that the district court should not have reached this question because it didn't even have subject matter jurisdiction over the habeas petition in the first place. And so this will continue to compound, and other claims like this, and there are many, are going to continue, I hope, to be invalidated. This happened all over the place. As soon as Trump came in and this Rubio decision came down, we saw a bunch of these lawsuits fly. We covered many of them here. So now we vacate Vermont and we remand this back down to dismiss his petition for lack of jurisdiction. And Congress should look into this judge and investigate him and perhaps impeach him with the others. So here's more about this dude. Okay, age 35, born and raised in the West Bank, lived in the U.S. for a decade, been in Vermont for a long time, came in, got a visa, married an American citizen, and then she wanted to make him a naturalized citizen. Fortunately, that hopefully is not going to happen. In January 2015, he became a conditional permanent resident. Then in 18, he became a lawful permanent resident without condition, as a guest still. Then in 21, some 7 years after entering the United States, he went to Columbia University, very nice university. Maybe an American citizen could have had that seat. He is currently a master's student at Columbia School of International and Public Affairs. So he's been in school now for quite a while. Now, after Israel responded to Hamas's 10/7 attack, he became a vocal opponent of the war, started protesting on campus. And so the proceedings here for removal then initiated. Marco Rubio came in. April 14th, Homeland arrested this dude at a USCIS facility. He gave a naturalization interview, and they said, oh, we're taking you into custody. They transferred him to a different facility. They gave him a notice to appear. Rubio came out and said, we have now determined that your presence in the U.S. would have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for our country. The declaration from Rubio alleges that Madawi called for the destruction of Israel and was identified at protests as having engaged in threatening rhetoric and the intimidation of pro-Israeli bystanders, as we saw in some of those videos. So then They ordered him to appear back before the DOJ, an immigration judge under Article 2. He would show up at a Louisiana detention facility. They transported him, but missed the flight and more. So as soon as this all happens, he gets a bunch of lawyers. They sue. And we saw in the Cuba report that the National Lawyers Guild has a lot of commie money, and they just have lawyers hand over hand, constantly filing to protect their favored class. So the petition says this is retaliation. This is targeted detention. He has constitutionally protected speech, and that Trump is now targeting these people for removal based on their rights. Same day, they also filed an emergency motion for a TRO, and the judge essentially granted that, filed a motion for release of custody and more. Then he said that he's dedicated to peace. He's not an agitator. He is studying conflict resolution. So you need to let him out. Then a bunch of people came and filed for him. Over 125 letters came in saying that they know him and he wants common ground with the Israelis. And they're mad about the war in Gaza. So the government's principal argument here before the court is saying, you can't even hear this case. Okay, this guy's going through immigration proceedings. You have no right to even hear his petition. But in response to this, the government also produced some other filings. They gave us a 2015 police report with a statement from a Vermont gun owner who claimed that Mahdawi had visited the store twice. He wanted to go into a gun store and buy a sniper rifle and a machine gun. And according to this affidavit, stated that he used to build submachine guns to kill Jews while he was in Palestine. He's like riffing with the gun store owner. Okay, well, we don't really need that here. According to the police report, the gun store owner put police in touch with the owner's friend, who said that Mahdawi had on another occasion wanted to purchase firearms and stated, "I like to kill Jews." All right. So several months later, in November, the FBI, another special agent, interviewed him about that. He denied making those statements, and the investigation ended that same year. So the judge is like, oh, let him go. Yeah, let him out. The government also pointed to another incident in 2019 in which Mahdawi was stopped by Custom and Border Patrol officers at the border. And when they stopped him, he had LSD, methamphetamine, mushrooms, tested positives for opiates, $4,100 in cash. They charged him with possession of drugs, but those charges were dismissed. Wow. And the record was expunged. He completed a diversion program. Before the district court, Mahdawi denied possessing illegal drugs on this occasion as well. Now, the court at the lower level, before letting this dude go, ordered the government to produce the FBI agent. The FBI agent appeared, and the government objected to him testifying, saying he can't testify. These are national security issues. You have no right to even hear this case in the first place. And the lower level judge ultimately, again, let him go. So after briefing an argument, the lower court ordered him released. Yeah, go back to the gun store. Why don't you get some more machine guns? In its opinion and order on its motion for release, the judge said that the government's arguments fail. I have jurisdiction. I'm ignoring U.S. code. The judge noted that the Illegal Immigration Reform and Responsibility Act contained various jurisdiction stripping provisions that steals his power away from him to be able to actually act on this case. But I think that I'm still going to handle it, and did so. After determining that the release was appropriate under this court's decision, the court denied the government's request for a stay. The dude runs free. So then the government appealed the same day. The next day, the government filed a lengthy motion and moved to consolidate this with some other cases. A bunch of these cases have been filed. And they say, no, the judge was wrong. He has no jurisdiction to even hear this case. This is an immigration proceeding. He can't go cry to mom when he's being prosecuted by dad. Dad's handling it. So the government petitioned for a rehearing. 2 days later, they moved to expedite the appeal, and the matter came up to us, and here's what we say. Now, we first address some procedural stuff, which we'll fast forward through. The motions panel, so the Court of Appeals made some other prior rulings on the stay. So when Trump went up there and said, stay his release, let us take him back into custody, the Court of Appeals ruled against them. So they say, does that prior ruling, not on the merits, but on the motion for a stay, does that matter? Does that impact us here? They say, as an initial matter, we'll run through this, but no, they're different. A merits panel may revisit a decision by a motions panel. We're not bound by your motion decision because now we're validating the merits. And so now we can actually have a different argument that we're basing our opinion here on. So next, we turn to the actual law. The law passed in 1996, which I think was Bill Clinton, says that judicial review of all questions of law, in fact, arising from any action shall be available only in judicial review of a final order of removal. Okay, so once you're through the immigration processes, then you can sue. But as to habeas, okay, so while you're in the immigration processes, you're not done yet, can you then leave Article 2 and go over to Article 3? Congress literally in 2005 expressly said no. No court shall have jurisdiction under habeas for this matter. Only after the immigration process is completed can they then sue. All of this unmistakable. Saying, in other words, the law channels judicial review of these questions only once there's a final order of removal, so back into custody. Now, in his habeas petition, he says the government targeted him for his First Amendment and that the district court needed to vacate and set aside the Rubio determination. Okay, so Rubio has no power now because a judge and a non-citizen agitator are coming in and taking over. They said that this actually isn't a bar, saying the habeas petition, him saying he's been wrongfully detained, has nothing to do with the removal proceedings. It's actually about the First Amendment, not about immigration removal, right? So first they say, the relevant inquiry here is about any action taken to remove him. Okay, so that is the crux of his filing. Here, plain meaning of any action is about the removability determination from Rubio. He's saying it's about the First Amendment, but the First Amendment is relating back to the removal. And the word any means any. So even the narrowest definition of any action taken would include removability under the First Amendment. It fits under there. Next, the legal issues that he presents are, again, arguing under the First and Fifth Amendment. He says they're not subject to the stripping of the jurisdiction. Again, they disagree. Lower level judge got it completely wrong. And without attempting a new comprehensive assessment on this, we're going to incorporate some of the logic from these prior cases. That was about bail, confinement, and more. But Mahdawi's case is not like that case. His petition, unlike a challenge to the length or the conditions of the affinement, is raising a legal question that is challenging Rubio's determination for his removal. And as the Third Circuit recognized right next door, in Khalil, those claims are inextricably intertwined with the claim of removal. Those are all barred by the zipper clause. It channels most claims that even relate to removal into a final decision. If this were not the case, Third Circuit already explained this clearly in Khalil, the zipper clause would be wholly undone. And then all these non-citizens would be suing based on any argument they could make under the Constitution. The entire immigration process could be just nuked because of Article 3 papers and filings. So he makes 4 arguments, but none of them is persuasive. He says the bar only arises after a final order of removal. He says that the statute gives him that right, but that's not what the law says, they explain. Justice Thomas and Gorsuch also pointed out it refers to all. We have the words any and all. So that means all. And moreover, and conclusively, if his reading of the prefatory clause were correct, a plurality would have no occasion to draw distinctions between law and fact. And so he fails. And as to his second point, he then says that he was targeted for removal, not just detention based on the First Amendment. He says, I have constitutionally protected speech. And as in Khalil, his arguments are essentially identical. And so notwithstanding his efforts to elide the point, his retaliatory detention claims requires a court to decide legal questions, all stemming from the action to ultimately remove him. And all of that is stripped. The courts can't consider those questions. So a lot more on that. And then we also cite the Third Circuit decision in another case. He says that is also incorrect. In fact, that claim is what the Third Circuit rejected. These legal questions are bound up in the concept of the action taken for removal, and so legal questions also count. Third Circuit found the same. And finally, he says, this deprives me of an opportunity for review. No one's going to look at this. Obviously, that's false. He could have sought relief, but those individuals charged as removable may not get a bond hearing. The Supreme Court has gone through a bunch of other things, and he can challenge his removal at the conclusion of his immigration proceedings. And they're going to get to that here. Now, as for the factual record, we're also unpersuaded. After he gets the final order of removal, then he can sue and then he can challenge. That has not happened yet. And so as it stands right now, he loses. Congress has specifically prohibited the use of habeas petitions to review any questions of law or fact, including interpretation and application of constitutional law and statutory rules. Saying here, in doing so, they wanted to delay federal courts reviewing these things. Now he invites us to undo all of that. We decline his invitation. We leave in place the scheme legislated by Congress. And so accordingly, we vacate and remand back down to the judge in Vermont to dismiss his petition. He can object to this once they get through the immigration proceedings. But now his petition is gone. And now we've got two circuits finding accordingly. And so not a good day for the non-citizens who are here trying to exploit our courts. Congress has already passed the rules. Take it up with immigration. We know immigration under Trump is not going to be very empathetic to his arguments. And so hopefully this gets dealt with quickly and he can go agitate in his home country. I'm sure there's a whole movement over there in Palestine. He can go get comfortable with them. Trump was out today saying that we're getting bad people out of our country at levels never seen before, and another one marked for removal.
Well, this is what's happening with the people that they allowed to come into our country. They shouldn't have allowed them to come in. They shouldn't be here. They're radical lunatics, and I'm getting them out. You know, we're getting them out at a pace. You know, we've gotten rid of more than any other president. I read stories. They try and give you phony stats. I was with Tom Homeland this morning. He'll give you the statistics if you want, but we're getting bad people out of our country at levels never seen before. There's never been a time when more bad people, and you take a look just here in Washington, we took out almost 5,000 hard-line, hardcore criminals, most of whom came in during the open border periods of the previous administration. Well,
yeah, and when you're here as a guest in America, you should be on your best behavior. You should be somebody who's opening doors for little old ladies, walking them across the street. You should be helping them take the trash out. Yes, ma'am, I'll help move this trash can out. And be on your best behavior because you're a guest in the country. We've got our own agitators here. We've got our own citizens who are lunatics that we got to deal with. We don't need to be importing these problems from the rest of the world in order to sanctify some leftist ideology and their perversion for diversity. We have enough of all of that here. We've got a whole panoply of various opinions that we got to deal with on a regular basis. We don't need to bring in any foreign influence in order to continue to exacerbate the problems in America. We'll deal with those on our own. So another one, afuera, on out of here. We're happy to see it. Third Circuit, Second Circuit, hopefully many more also fall in line with this. And if not, the Supreme Court can settle this and validate it across the nation. But we also wonder if these decisions will have any impact on Kilmar wife-beater Abrego Garcia, although he's essentially conceding removability. But it's the same pattern. District-level judges are insurrecting the executive branch, preventing the operation of the law, using illegal methodologies to do it, and then they're getting reversed. And so one way to check the judiciary is to have Congress go and investigate these judges. This judge knew what he was doing. He read the law. He knew what it said. He knew he didn't have any jurisdiction. But like Gumby, he tried to contort himself on behalf of non-citizens with whom he probably agreed. Not anymore. Fortunately, we have some sanity that came out today. He may appeal it, take it up to the Supreme Court. So I'm sure more will be revealed on this one. But today, Major victory in the deportation fight. Hopefully, many more to come. All right, now, we got some other great stories coming up, including this one. This one's pretty wild. And then we got Fauci and his advisors and their internal Slack messages coming up after this one. So here's the background on this. And this one, pretty interesting. A prosecutor just got fired. Apparently, she was doing some inappropriate things with people who were coming through her court system. One of those inappropriate things was apparently sleeping with an illegal alien, allegedly. And now the Missouri Attorney General said she has to go. She has an ethical problem and is violating multiple standards that exist for state prosecutors. So she's now on her way out and has been stripped of her power after this romance with an illegal immigrant. He, as an illegal immigrant, was accused of a sex crime, and so she was saying, let's just go bang it out, amigo. Also has a pattern of misconduct, and her name is detailed here. She's from Ray County. Her name is Camille Johnson. You just saw a photo of her. She did not recuse herself from an investigation involving this illegal immigrant. This guy was called Juan David Gutierrez. Didn't disclose his whereabouts to law enforcement and then transferred him the title to her vehicle to help him abscond, okay? So we've talked about the backdoor judge who let an illegal alien have his way with her backdoor. She got slapped with criminal charges, a very light penalty for backdoor Dugan, who shall henceforth be forever known as the backdoor judge. She got probation, didn't get probation, not a day on probation, no prison time, no jail, and a $5,000 fine, and now she's appealing it. So you thought that that illegal alien using a judge's backdoor was bad. This is a prosecutor who was sleeping with the dude, then didn't tell law enforcement where this offender was, and then gave him her car to leave while literally having sex with him. Wild. So the filing also says that she had other improper relationships and apparently also had a problem with a criminal defense attorney and another man charged with domestic violence in the very county. So meanwhile, the petition against her prompted a judge to grant the order and saying, you're no longer a prosecutor here. Also said that this lady was retaliating against an employee and creating an atmosphere of fear and intimidation. And a lot of statements on this. Once again, here's the woman. The Missouri AG who got rid of her is called Catherine Hanaway, stripping Camille Johnson, seen here on the right of the screen, for making bang bang with a non-citizen. And do we have a picture of this non-citizen? That guy came from Somalia. And so here's more on the story so you can kind of put some names to faces. Courtesy of Fox 2 out of St. Louis. We're live.
A Missouri prosecutor accused of a sex scandal is removed from her elected post.
The story is gaining international attention for who she is accused of having inappropriate relationships with.
Sex.
Mark Zinn spoke to Missouri's Attorney General, who calls the alleged conduct sickening.
Yeah, that's for sure.
She has breached the public trust in every way.
Missouri Attorney General Catherine Hanaway says Ray County Prosecutor Camille Johnson was removed from office for abusing the office in one of the most unethical ways possible.
We got complaints from people in Ray County, including in the courthouse. Some of them were very specific about her conduct, and her conduct was deplorable.
The Attorney General says the elected prosecutor engaged in intimate and romantic relationships with at least one criminal defense attorney representing clients she was prosecuting.
What?
And a relationship with an undocumented immigrant accused of sexual assault.
What?
We allege in our complaint for the Quo that she had sexual relations with a defense counsel, a potential defendant, an illegal immigrant to whom she gave her car so that he could abscond. It's unbelievable behavior, including, members of the courthouse walking in on her during one of these incidents.
Last week, Hanaway filed a motion to temporarily remove Johnson from her post. and a judge quickly approved the temporary ouster.
And we didn't go right to the quo. We gave her an opportunity to do the right thing and resign, and she wouldn't take that opportunity, which is stunning to me. Frankly, I'm glad it's being publicly exposed. I want people to know that wherever corruption happens in the state, this office is going to go after it.
Johnson has not been able to be reached for comment, and the Ray County Prosecuting Attorney's Office said they had no comment. Now, a big question I had, what happens to all these other cases that she was trying over the last few years? Hanaway said her office is looking into that answer.
Yeah, and all of the other defendants need to go get tested for STDs or something because apparently there was a lot of intercourse going on there. She was banging defense lawyers. She was banging illegal immigrants who were there, who were charged with crimes in her office's prosecution. Wild times out there. So now she's in big trouble. And we got the filings that have dropped here. So you saw the Attorney General, Hanaway, gave us the details. They filed a petition for a writ of quo warranto to throw her on out of there. And we heard her statements, but we'll take a look at the actual document, the whole thing published over there at the Missouri AG website. Here is what was filed to throw her on out of there, saying, now I'm the AG and I'm prosecuting this case for cause to get rid of this lady. This lady called Camille Johnston was elected prosecuting attorney. She probably was inspired by Fani Willis. A lot of very Fani Willis inspired people out there, including the other judge who was also banging the cop in her judicial chambers. Remember that one? People could hear the sounds. They put on like jazz music. There were stains on the couch cushions. Wild. So now she has held that office since January 1, 2023. It's an elected position. So now we're coming after her because obviously this is a problem, saying we need trust in the administration of justice. You're not supposed to sleep with your defendants. On or about J1, she took the following oath. I swear I'm not going to demean myself in office by having sex with everybody. She knowingly and willfully failed or refused to perform official acts because she was busy doing other acts and doing other duties. All of that is a big problem. The misconduct is more fully alleged below, but the rules say not supposed to do that stuff under the ethical guidelines of a prosecutor. So among the duties, she shall commence and prosecute people, not sleep with them. And so she should also use sound discretion. The rules say she needs to use her judgment and her conscience and more. Rules of professional conduct say, don't have an appearance of impropriety like Fani did. You ought to be above suspicion. Don't sleep with the defense lawyers. This person called TT is a licensed attorney practicing in Ray County. He's represented numerous criminal defendants against criminal charges brought by Camille. She's a prosecutor. He's a defense lawyer. It's like the start of a Tom Hanks movie. Respondent and TT have been engaged in an intimate and romantic relationship. Now, upon information and belief, the relationship has been intentionally concealed from the public. So this guy's indicting her and then getting his indictments of his clients dismissed. He's like, hey, baby, I'll bring you some flowers. You got to file a motion to dismiss this. Also, charging his people. This relationship, at the very least, creates an obvious appearance of a conflict of interest. Not supposed to do that, obviously. They're on opposite sides of the line there. And she didn't notify anybody about it, okay? If you have something like that going on, you should at least disqualify yourself from any of his cases and vice versa. Not only is this conflict being withheld from the citizens who actually elected her, but she's also aware that it must be disclosed, and she didn't do that. She also knowingly created an atmosphere within the prosecutor's office of fear and intimidation, verbally berating her staff and her employees. Also, one former employee called JM became aware that she was engaged in another romantic relationship with a prospective defendant. So she's sleeping with the defense lawyer and is like, you know who I really like, your client. What's he up to? This dude was called CW, charged with acts of domestic violence against his wife. This dude must be like in a whole different planet right now. He's like, I just got arrested for beating my wife, and now I'm having sex with the prosecutor? What kind of justice system is this? Respondent then retaliated against this former employee by firing her when respondent became aware that JM was aware of the inappropriate relationship. So employee says maybe you shouldn't be sleeping with the defendant who's charged with domestic violence. She's like, why? It's so hot though. Because you're an elected prosecutor. Get out of my office. I'm going to fire you. Prosecutors have special responsibilities as ministers of justice. You're supposed to punish them, which, I guess maybe, respondent was eventually disqualified from the prosecution of those charges when local law enforcement became aware of this. They found out that the prosecutor was sleeping with the defendant and they sought a special prosecutor for the case. Respondent also recognized the impropriety of the relationship and intentionally and willfully withheld information about that relationship. Didn't tell the victim. These people are nuts, man. So the victim, whose husband beat her, doesn't know that the husband is sleeping with the prosecutor, who's supposed to be getting justice for the victim. Crazy. Despite the readily apparent conflict of interest and reasonable concern of anyone, including the reporting victim in the wife-beating case, that respondent could not objectively weigh the evidence and make any other detached decisions about the case. She didn't address it at all. She needed to disqualify herself, and she didn't. She also failed to fulfill her obligations as a prosecutor. And in another case, the prosecutor, Camille, was presented with evidence that an individual named JG was a suspect in the alleged commission of a crime of sexual violence and that this person should be prosecuted for that crime. She's like, that sounds hot. I'm going to hit him up on text. Respondent had been or became involved in a romantic, intimate relationship with JG. She was the prosecuting attorney there. She was informed by local law enforcement officers and members of the Missouri State Highway Patrol that respondent's paramour, the lover, JG, was a suspect in a sexual assault. It's like 3 dudes in like 3 pages. Respondent JG had lived together prior to this and had been involved in a romantic and intimate relationship. Then the prosecutor was also knowing that this guy was a citizen of Mexico and was an illegal alien who was here since 2019. What is going on? She failed to fulfill her responsibility, did not disqualify herself from the investigation and the prosecution of the case. And because she did, in fact, know where this dude lived, she's like, he's at my house. She still told cops that she had no idea where he was, obstructed their investigation. Then she subsequently visited JG in Mississippi. He had absconded down there to evade law enforcement. Then they went to Florida to vacation with JG, probably going on a cruise with Fannie and Nathan. And the judge with her cop lover, Eleanor Ross. Additionally, during respondent's current term in office, she drove her personal vehicle to Mississippi in 23 and gave this illegal alien the title to her vehicle so that he could leave. In 24, JG was ultimately arrested in Ohio. He's currently awaiting trial for sexual offenses, which includes felonies. And so the circuit court disqualified her and her office, but she didn't request it. Other people busted her. She also willfully withheld this information from the victim. Her office personnel and all others failed to bring any criminal charges against the dude because she loves him or something. And again, man, I keep saying like illegal alien due process is way better than anything that we would get. This dude is literally sleeping with the prosecutor. Okay, Kilmar just called the FBI and they let him go. Christopher Wray didn't show up and have intercourse with him, probably. But this prosecutor did. Furthermore, respondent actually assisted a JG in absconding, knowing that he had been accused of a sexual offense and that he was under criminal investigation. Obstruction, she should be charged with concealing a wanted felon. Also absconded in a vehicle available so that he could abscond and with knowledge that he would likely go back to Mexico to avoid detention. In all of these situations, her objectivity and fidelity to her law enforcement obligation failed, and she recognized the impropriety of this, knowing they created a genuine concern, willfully withheld information about these relationships, and has now been busted. The Missouri Supreme Court has previously publicly suspended members of the bar for sleeping with suspects and witnesses. And furthermore, we think that she has created an atmosphere of fear and tension within her office. She has outbursts of anger and violence, causing her staff to be fearful whenever she's in the office. This lady has 100% put people in jail and prison. Just to be clear, there are people sitting in prison right now because this lady prosecuted them. Respondent has likely committed the crime of acceding to corruption, hindering prosecution. There we go. She knowingly violated her legal duty. In fact, this provision of Missouri law says a public servant is guilty of a crime of corruption if he or she knowingly solicits or agrees to accept any benefit, including intercourse, in return for their exercise of discretion as a public servant. Violation of a known legal duty, also guilty of hindering prosecution if you harbor or conceal a person, warns such people of impending discovery or apprehension, gives them money or vehicles to get out of here, or obstructs their apprehension in the process. So this is a problem, likely constitutes a Class D felony, also for receiving benefits in whatever form they came. And this conduct is also a Class E felony for harboring. These are willful violations, and she needs to go. So we're filing to remove her from office, an order of quo warranto to vacate her position, and for other costs that are appropriate. And hopefully she's charged with crimes for this. This lady's a lunatic psychopath. And so now you see the judge granted that. So upon the filing of this, this is granted. She's gone. The respondent shall file an answer to this petition, and you are enjoined, Camille, from engaging in any activity, any authority as a prosecutor. Do not enter the offices of the prosecution. Do not enter the courthouse. Do not conduct any business with that office unless explicitly authorized by this court. Signed off on by the judge out there, Circuit Court of Ray County, state of Missouri. And so she's in big trouble, man. And seemingly, allegedly, is a disgusting person. Gross. But there's a lot of that going on in our justice system, and I would imagine that she can call Fani Willis and Nathan Wade and get some friendly advice from them on how to navigate sex scandals that are beneath the ethics of the office. And so we'll keep our eye on this one. Hopefully charges are coming soon. Backdoor Dugan let an illegal alien use her backdoor. This prosecutor was letting the illegal alien use a lot of things and was also sleeping with defense lawyers in a disgusting perversion of justice. So good riddance to her. Shout out to the AG of Missouri for bringing this to our attention and taking serious action on this. We'll keep our eye on it and wait for those charges to drop. All right, one more update today, my friends, and then we'll hear from you and see what you say about all of this and more as soon as we're done here. But we've got some very interesting documents to attend to on this one. From Rand Paul. Fauci's top advisors in big trouble. Rand Paul now has the documents, and he is releasing them for our enjoyment. It includes messages in an internal Slack system where they were acknowledging that things were much worse than they let on. Of course, in public, they told us one story, and in private, an entirely different story. Now we get to see the truth. He says today in an X thread, also joined by multiple documents from his newly published reading room, we've got Slack messages, we've got cover-up messages from the FBI, who was seeking to prevent them from being interrogated when they came back across the border on their trips from China, and more. But Rand breaks it down at the top. He says, today, I'm releasing Slack messages from the authors of the Proximal Origin article. This was the paper that we read that was used to shut down the lab leak question. Early 2020, this article was published and everybody said it came from a wet market in China. Their private conversations, though, tell an entirely different story. The authors publicly said that there was no evidence that the vid was engineered at all. But privately, this dude, Christian Anderson, put the odds of a lab leak higher at 30%. Eddie said it was 20%. He revised that down to 10%, but those are not zero. And then as more evidence came out, they started to say things like this. Some smoking-ish guns are now starting to appear that I'm just not comfortable with. We saw the Furin cleavage site, where they were lopping together two components of the virus in order to make it more adaptable to humans. He said, our paper that we published that Fauci spread all over the media was pretty strong in saying, quote, there's no way that this came from a lab, but now I have less confidence in that statement at this stage. The messages also show the authors were coordinating directly with the U.S. intelligence community. Anderson, one of the lead authors, told his co-authors that he would have, quote, a handler from the IC starting on Thursday. That was the very same day that Fauci met with the intelligence community during the 90-day origin sprint as they were covering up that they did this. Anderson also told his co-authors that, quote, the spooks will spend quite a bit of time in sunny San Diego during their IC review, and asked Gary if he'd be questioned too, but Gary had not been contacted yet. Now, when the DARPA diffuse proposal leaked, the detailed plans to insert these furin cleavage sites into bat coronaviruses, the group didn't just discuss the science, they discussed managing their paper trail and engaging in a cover-up. Quote, stay off email. Quote, carefully curate some emails for the FOIA records, knowing that something needed to come up on here, but they didn't want the truth to be revealed. They also discussed keeping the intelligence community and Dr. Fauci's team at the NIH updated, quote, getting something back to Tony's team regarding the leaked diffuse materials and also chatting to intelligence folks. The authors believe the gain of function was actually happening at Wuhan and that Americans were facilitating it. A lot of the gain of function work on SARS-like CoVs is also from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, although there are also other labs that have been doing this too, like with Ralph Barrick. He also is asked about a question. Was he on that private call? He seems to think so. Did he leak details to the outside press? The authors seem to think so too. They discussed the alleged leaker only as Deep Throat or DT. Sounds like a Fannie Willis label. They also discussed meeting to address what they call the Barrick Daszak crap show, and this is part of the ongoing public record. One of the authors of the paper, Proximal Origin, called Eddie Holmes, repeatedly discusses his contacts on the ground in China who fed him exclusive and sensitive information, even going so far as to say, one is my spy. So we've got the documents here queued up. Let me show you what is inside. Rand Paul published the entire reading room and has been on this issue for quite some time. We know Fauci is scheduled to come out here, I think, next week to sit down for a new inquiry launched by Congress. We'll see if he pleads the fifth or what he does, but here's background on the Slack messages that have all been released. Let's take a look at the highlights. We know about the paper, okay? They published this March 17, 2020. All the so-called scientists wrote a fake report. They said any lab leak scenario was not plausible. It came from a wet market. This shaped the entire conversation. People got thrown off the internet for saying it came from a lab. Only after the truth started to come out was it even acceptable to talk about it. And if we had known that this was a human-engineered bioweapon, essentially, it could have changed the entire trajectory of the pandemic. But they lied to us because they're liars. So the authors privately put the odds much higher than what they were saying in public. Then the DARPA diffuse proposal came out. This was a grant proposal submitted by Peter Daszak of EcoHealth Alliance with Bat Lady Zhengli Shi of Wuhan. They said we're literally going to cobble together viruses. We're going to create these furin cleavage sites, smash them together, and create the spike protein that enhances how this enters human cells. The proposal then leaked, and it surfaced, and it triggered the alarm. They said, oh no, we have to cover this up, and they did. We have to carefully curate some emails for the records, and we got to tell Fauci about this. Here's how these messages went down. One Slack message from a guy called Robert Gary. He said, I like weird, just ask Christian Anderson. I'm a big ferret fan too, if we're considering non-bats. Yeah, ferret badger would be great. Let's blame the ferrets in China. They talk about a report. Someone else says, I missed the error. And if you look at the distribution of Twitterers in all of the US, talking about one of us needs to find a married blonde socialist side piece. whatever they're talking about. So just had a thought. For the GVP to work, they would have to sequence a gazillion viruses. Then to work out which of these might infect humans, they would have to test them all in a range of cells. We previously pointed out the enormity of this task. It's not just the size. What they are effectively proposing hundreds of thousands of gain-of-function experiments to potentially infect humans. Even if we don't think the virus came out of a lab, surely this is now an unacceptable risk. Now, not quite sure how to say it without encouraging the lab escape crowd for a current outbreak. Exactly. That's why I haven't said anything, winky face. You're ahead of me, Christian. I think more about how this can be done. Christian says, while I knew about the furin site insertion experiments, I did realize that this is exactly where SARS-2 inserted the protein experimentally in the SARS virus. So gotta say here, this is the big one that Rand referenced, some smoking-ish guns now starting to appear that I'm not comfortable with. And Alina here is touching on a lot of points that we've discussed previously. The furin site in SARS-2 is exactly the same as it is in some of the HKU1 sequences. They know. When I talked to Farzan way back in the day, he mentioned that the one thing he'd be looking for was whether SARS-2 would lose the site under different conditions. We now know this to be true, but there are examples in people too. So someone else responds, exactly where they inserted it? Yeah, but that's a single site. If you're going to convert a furin site, then adding RRA in that exact position, the only thing that makes sense, that would not make sense to stick that in there. Yeah, agreed. However, this is the exact site already in other coves, not in HKU1, as I said, but in Feline Cove. Part I'm particularly struggling with is that at the end of the day, we don't really have any hard evidence one way or the other. And especially given some of the recent evidence, we also can't rule out that somebody actually put it in there. There's obviously not to say that somebody did, but we can't rule it out. Our paper was pretty strong in saying there's no way, but now I have less confidence in that statement at this stage. Did they tell us? No. They didn't. This was in June 2020. They didn't tell us. Eddie says, what's smoking guns, Christian? I don't quite see it. What recent evidence are you talking about? That other paper was literally the first one that I read. Does its presence in HKU1 suggest that these events in nature a lot? Do we know where these come from? I was reading Mike's paper to suggest that this other part was under selection to increase the infectivity of CoV-2 because it was directly related to the furin cleavage insertion such that it did not perfectly adapt to humans on emergence. Well, what about Bill Gallagher's evidence? Saying actually that does have an optimal site. Some strains have an insert or deletion point. And this comes from rodents maybe. Perhaps rodents are involved in CoV-2. I'm really struggling to understand why someone would put a furin site into a random bat virus they had not previously sequenced and published. Has the Barrett Group ever done an experiment like this? Accidental lab escape is one thing, but why would you deliberately do this to a bat virus to create a bioweapon? Then why would you publish the sequence of a related bat virus that puts you in frame? There was no need to do that if you were guilty. Then why would we publish the sequence of a related bat virus that puts you in frames? He says to throw off M15 and Pompeo. Christian says people have put furin sites in the coves previously. Here's one example. There's a paper where they put it into a bat virus too. It has a much broader host range. I believe from Barrick's group, I'll find it. He says at locations S1 and 2. Yeah, the paper above is exactly that, exactly where it's inserted into Cove. That's the part I missed previously. I've known about these, but I didn't realize it. But the inserted site is not the same in the paper. That would have been a dead giveaway. He says we're going around in circles. We already discussed this. My take is the site are everywhere in nature, so it could have come from nature. I'm revising a paper on avian viruses. They have one. To me, that's a natural prior. He says, yeah, I'm aware of that. I was not aware that their insertion was exactly where it is in CoV-2. Now, also, this guy Eddie says the paper never calls it a cleavage site insertion. I think the alignment in that paper is optimal, and so it's complicated. Well, here's the paper from Barrick, okay? Not the insertion, but showing the cleavage broadens the host range. It can infect more people. This is also not a new paper. I've been aware of this all along, so not a smoking gun, but there are concerns here. Let me spend some time on the table with the things that bother me because there are several. That would be useful. Okay, let me get it all down, including the silly stuff, wink. Make sure there's a column on your table for possible natural explanation. I don't see why the adaptation in animals and culture would produce a virus that would need not adapt in humans themselves. And so I also think we should focus on the genetic details. Eddie's like, it's natural, okay? Trust me. Christian says, I agree with that. But the issue is that some of the new evidence is certainly peculiar, plus some additional details that might have come to light, like the acquisition of the site in tissue culture in bovine COVID. So nothing has changed in terms of prior risk of lab accident, but the issue is that we're dealing with the fact that the Wuhan Institute has been doing culturing of the bat coves for over a decade, exactly to understand what it takes for these viruses to go into humans. We describe this in a paper and say that this work is performed, quote, all of the world, but that isn't true. It has been exclusively been going on at Wuhan. The Eco Health grant was also specifically funded for this type of work. He's like realizing it, and described the kind of experiments to be done in tissue cultures. This research primarily involves collecting and culturing viruses from bats. And then it seems plausible that this happened. A lot of the gain of function work, there it is, on SARS-like CoVs is also from Wuhan, although there were also other labs that have been doing that as well with Ralph Barracks. Now, none of this tells us anything new, but it means that given no data, I find both scenarios to be equally probable. There it is. Given the data that we had seen at the time of our writing, I was highly skewed towards natural, covering up himself. But with some of this new data, plus stuff I didn't know previously, I'm moving much toward the middle again. Yeah. Suffice it to say, since writing this paper, I've explained a ton of scientists and policymakers over and over again. I've been screaming about why this is natural. And I have been pretty surprised to learn that most scientists I talk to believe there is a likely connection to a lab because we could see it. We could see the reaction. We knew, they knew, everybody knew. They were covering it up. Even the scientists are like twisting themselves to explain this. How many viruses and pandemics and bird flus and swine flus and other things have we seen in our lives? Many. Every year there's something new. This was something different. They knew. Trump went in to one of the briefings. He went in orange. He came out white. He had seen a ghost. He said, crap, we're locking the country down. He knew. I could read it on his face. Many of you could too. This was not normal. People that are themselves doing gain of function in other experiments, they know the risks, and they don't seem to think that a natural explanation is more likely than a lab culture, because, of course, it didn't come from a wet market. He says, fair points, but that work isn't exclusively done at Wuhan. I still don't see why this new data is. What is it, bovine? What else is there, says Eddie. To me, there is more evidence against the lab escape than when we wrote the paper. I think the bats not roosting in winter argument is nothing because I reckon it went through an intermediate host anyway. Do you have a copy of the Eco Health grant? He sends it. Yeah, but that work isn't exclusively done at Wuhan because, as you say yourself, the Barrack lab is doing it too. No, that work is exclusively at Wuhan. Barrack's lab is doing /did gain of function research where they created reverse genetics to study the viruses. All this done at a BSL-3 lab. So much less risk of exposure. The work in China and Xi's lab is different. Here, they are taking bat coves and culturing them under BSL-2 in cell lines from different animals to understand which ones can infect human cells and what types of mutations that occur there to make them permissive. They probably have more than 10 papers where they describe that type of work on all kinds of viruses like coves. Eddie says, oh, okay, got it, that helps. Eddie, takes a minute. Okay. Have the Xi lab published all the viruses they use in these experiments? Do they find the same mutations that appear in COVE? Christian responds, well, in our paper, we argue against manipulation and tissue culture. Our main argument in the paper that everybody took and made gospel were that manipulation is hard. But the Germans came out and they created a reverse genetic system of SARS-2 in less than 2 weeks. So clearly, it's not that hard at all. Our arguments against tissue culture mostly came down to the O-linked glycans and a mucin-like domain. But by now, it seems clear that these don't actually form a mucin-like domain, but rather are other modulates at the furin site. All of our arguments about natural viruses emerging, the RBD identical and pangolins and coves others, all still stand. But the main new things that bother me the most, one, lack of selection. A lot of the selection is for replication in a particular host species. So yes, I would assume the culture would lower selection during subsequent transmissions in humans. Also, the gain of furin cleavage site of bovine cove, loss of the site in tissue culture, meaning it's active, the little details about the site, for example, that it's exactly in the hot spot where experiments had previously inserted it, the fact that the exact sequence exists in a cat cove, Bat Lady she herself being sketchy with details, and considering a lab accident, all of this can go both ways. Now, it's unclear to me if they publish sequences for these viruses. It's a lot of names are changing over time. And yes, of the 6 key mutations in the RBD, one of them occur in the tissue culture for SARS, but it's also present in pangolins. So then Eddie says, are you saying they deliberately inserted the furin cleavage site? I see no evidence of them ever doing that before. I don't think the RATG13 had a different name. I think there are partial sequences from another virus that is identical. Can we do a quick zoom? This guy's like, what? To me, loss of furin cleavage site in tissue culture, meaning it's active, strongly argues against culturing as being the cause of the insertion. He said, I'm making some dinner. 30 minutes? Okay, 6:30? Great. Sends the Zoom link. I'm on. Puts a bat emoji in the chat. Give some numbers. Eddie says 80-20. Christian says 70-30. Eddie says 90-10. Okay, it came from a lab. Eddie says, okay, strictly confidentially, I literally 2 minutes ago just got an email that says, okay, quote, recently we isolated the pangolin cove that is highly related to SARS-CoV-2. We further found that the infected pangolins showed similar CT scans with COVID patients, and others are positive. Thus, we further did the transcription of their tissue. We found multiple similar immune responses as the COVID patients. Therefore, an inadequate interferon response. And in addition, we found other interesting results. Now, I don't think the viruses are any closer to the ones that we have, but the clinical results are interesting. Clinically similar infection in an animal in nature, if this had come out of a lab. I will, of course, agree to help, see what else I can discover. Says, see here, no making fun of my tree, shares a picture of something. Eddie says, okay, got another FOIA. And this is on a different date. Now we're in 2021, so we advance. Got another FOIA request from somebody. This will be declined again and probably end up in court again. This is what my uni told me. Apparently, the uni cybersecurity people have kindly collated all my emails for me. And for context, the application was from another reporter from AP. The final scope of the application says, I want your emails. All University of Sydney email correspondence in the Viral Evolution Lab. We want Fauci's emails, Anderson's, Marion Koopman's, and others, including Colin Francis. So Andrew responds, says, I can confidently predict that the number of emails containing the words phytogenic coronavirus, Wuhan, and GISAD is 0. Okay. Except they're not going to find those because we're not sending those. Ignoring the spelling of phytogenic, this is amateur stuff. What useless keywords. Saying we want all of these searches, right? Coronavirus, Wuhan. He wouldn't even use those words. Apparently, my uni people corrected phytogenic to phylogenetic. When they say and do they actually mean or? Like, what does and mean? What does or mean? He says, I guess or means or. Going back to this channel for this, but this stuff is about the DARPA proposal. Makes me even more angry about the DT letter if it is indeed Barrick. He knew how suspicious an FCS would look back then. And then Christian says, and his attacks on me for even suggesting that we needed to take a look at this. He's a two-faced bastard. That's for sure. Talking about Barrick, man. Yeah. In my opinion, we really do need to take a closer look at what's described in this grant and look back at our now expanded alignment to see if anything pops up. Bob mentioned that there are differences in Laos BAT versus SC2 when it comes to glycans. That isn't reassuring. That's described on page 11. Andrew says, I agree. We need to stay on top of this. Yes, this can't and shouldn't be dismissed out of hand, says Christian. If there is anything suspicious, better that we say it and then address it. If there isn't, then we can let it blow over. Exactly. I suspect it'll be the latter. Me too. But it really isn't beyond plausibility that someone went ahead and tried some of this stuff. We just need to reconvince ourselves it's a coincidence. Yep, they were just playing around with this funky stuff. Just happened to also emerge naturally from the bats at the wet market. And it's just a weird coincidence that it's killing people across the planet. Correct, that's the problem. There's a big difference between the lab was working on bat COVID and the lab was modifying bat COVID using features that we see being unique to COVID. Yeah, the key question is, would anyone choose to put the FCS we see, the cleavage site, in COVID-2 and then put it out of frame? Would be a very strange way to do it, but it's not impossible, depending on their cloning strategy. If you wanted to insert a furin site, you would pick the AAs you wanted, right? You would pick the codons you wanted and then insert it that way. The alternative is that it was inserted in frame and then mutated to make it look out of frame. Again, says Christian, it depends on the cloning strategy. If they use restriction enzymes, there would be an easy way to insert it into a site with PCR utilizing REs already present in the sequence. Then it could be a way to do it. Not the optimal way for sure, but sometimes ease trumps perfection. Would you pick CGG, for example? Would you consider what codon to use for an R or just pick one arbitrarily? He said, well, that would be an unusual choice in my opinion. Not an optimized R and sort of middle of the pack as it comes into human genomes. Very rare, of course, because in viruses, it's this other location. Yeah, and you have 6 codons to choose from. Correct. The key here, too, is that if you were to optimize the furin site, as is commonly done for these types of experiments, you would not end up with the sequence we see, including the codons. But again, it doesn't really tell us much. Now, what I think we have to look at very closely are all the specific sites they talk about in the grant, and then compare it across our alignments. Is COVID unique in these positions compared to other banal viruses? Does it flip back to SARS-1 at these other positions? So I'll get some of this started later today. It's important to get the insights irrespective of what's going to end up showing. We need to know. Would there be any reason to pick SARS-2 backbone for doing these, assuming they had a genome sequence way back at the start? Well, in the grant, they specifically talk about new viruses. So an SC2 precursor could have been one of those low-risk viruses, and they started fiddling with it. They would have selected it from candidates, though, by sequencing it in the genome. I guess they would have seen the ACE2 binding RBD and thought, hey, let's try one here. Or they were just selecting viruses by seeing if they could get any culture and then worry about the genome sequencing. He says it's the former. That's the approach they describe in the grant. And the culture is very challenging, so that doesn't make sense. Here's what I suggest we do. We make spike protein alignments with COV1, the various other COVs, these other viruses, pangos and others. Mark the key sites based on what's in the grant. Gary can help with this. Check to see if there's anything odd between COV2 and the other viruses. Look at the codon usage and then cross-check everything to see how these things have evolved. And Andrew says, stay off email or carefully curate some of these emails for the FOIA records. Okay, I'm on my bit. Exactly, says Christian. Let's dig around a little and then start an email chain. I'm in Zoom calls most of the day, but I'll dive in the afternoon. Actually, let me get started. I just cleared my calendar for the next hour. Gary says, is this a good set for the COVID-1? Shares an image. Christian says, I'm getting those and annotating the genomes now. Oh, can't wait, says Andrew. Probably worth having the full genomes aligned if we can only focus on the close relatives of the spike. Yep, I'm getting at the full-length genomes first, and then we can cut alignments out from there. Getting them annotated too. Future Christian will thank present Christian. Fast forward a little bit. All right, first attempt at an annotated alignment. Am I missing anything? Shares an image. Excellent. What also annoys me is that Peter should have seen this coming, and it is worse than he was suggesting a few days ago. He's a jackass. We still have no evidence for the COVID in that lab, and they must have sequenced it first, but it is very striking that a bat-derived COVID with a furin cleavage site turns up in a city that was on grant proposing to muck around with the furin cleavage sites in a bat-derived COVID. Eddie's now on board, okay? Very skeptical, but now he's like, yeah, very strange coincidence, isn't it? I might see if I can talk to Linfa about it. He said, yeah, getting Linfa's take would be great on this. He's on the grant too. He hasn't mentioned anything about this. I'll get onto it. I'm also going to have to chat with the intelligence folk. Some of the most valuable info is going to come from sorting out the parallels between Cove 1 and 2. It's ironic that two key pieces surfaced in the past week. With Cove 1 and a little elbow grease, you'll see the adaptations from bat to civet to human, then from human to human. With Cove 2, we'll all have the same genomes except the intermediate hosts. And things are very similar, but put the site aside, nobody did these previously undiagnosed changes by design. Yep, all important points, Bob. Do you have the coordinates for the glycans? Yeah, I'm done with my Zoom call, so I'll focus on this for the rest of the night. Gives them the locations, shares Cove 1. I'd like to know what human-specific furin cleavage site is. Well, it's not the PRAR, that's for sure. I'm using these other tools and asks more questions about specific locations. We have some information about what this residue does in Cove 2. I think maybe we should have a chat tomorrow about the Barrick Daszak shit show. I would just like to discuss what our strategy should be so we don't get associated with these effers. Wow. So yeah, I think that would be good. We can't ignore this. And I also need to get something back to Tony's team at NIH. Too early Sydney time? I was just starting to have fun looking at Laotian bat viruses, but I can do that later if needed. Yeah, me too. I think those viruses are incredibly important. How about tomorrow, half an hour later? Good for me. Let's see what Eddie says. They find a time, email the Zoom meeting. Should we invite Joel or Mike on the call? We had a quick chat about the grant on another call this morning. No, we can talk to them separately. The dean just called me to his office to fix somebody's crisis. I said I'll be there in 20 minutes. More docs come out. Then they share a House document with a committee meeting. And that's the game. Now, this is just a small snippet of the highlights. Rand Paul released many more documents. This goes on for hundreds of pages. You can see the full exchanges are over on his website. 11,023 total pages of text messages. Okay, goes on and on and on. You can see it for over 1,100 pages. So a lot more inside, no doubt about it. But in addition to that, we're also learning that there was a major cover-up by the FBI, who did not want to have Border Patrol ultimately question Daszak, the guy who made his way from China into the United States. This guy right here, Peter Daszak of EcoHealth Alliance, who was the person who got the contract to go do this funky stuff with these viruses. Rand Paul said, they told us that the COVID lab leak wasn't plausible, but their messages say otherwise. And the latest drop also explains that Border Patrol prepared to stop and question Peter Daszak, the guy that they were just saying should have been more honest about everything he was doing. Could have told them too, by the way. Yeah, this very same thing that you're investigating, we were doing that in our lab. I got a contract for it. Those other scientists are flying blind. He was the president of EcoHealth Alliance. They were going to stop him on his way back from China, but the FBI told Border Patrol to stand down. The targeting package from Border Patrol flagged Daszak's 15-plus year relationship with Wuhan and his role as a lead researcher from the NIH, stating that much of the funding that Daszak gets goes to gain a function. They literally had a formal tactical terrorism response team exam that was scheduled for February 5, 2021 at JFK. Border Patrol wanted to ask about his contacts in China, whether he collected or transported biological samples, and what happened while he was over there. Standard border questions. 3 days before he landed, Border Patrol was told, FBI New York requested we do not stop the subject below. FBI says, stand down. This isn't the whole story. It's the start of one. The reading room will be updated on a rolling basis as the investigation continues. Here are those documents. Shorter filing here, but we know in February 21, Border Patrol was targeting this dude as he was coming back into the country. They knew that he had federal grants, he was going to China, and he had a bunch of research related to what was happening across the planet. The records identified an NIH grant, so Fauci was paying this dude. Daszak was the principal investigator, and there were scientific publications where they admitted what they were doing. Officials sought to determine whether the World Health Organization team visited Wuhan, what they inspected, whether Daszak was still talking to people, whether he brought biological samples back and forth, or what the heck happened. So this is an email, September 3rd, 2025. And looks like, actually, that is what got forwarded. Okay, so this gets forwarded from somebody to somebody, forward referral event for Daszak. Then the actual email was February 4th, 2021. Okay, so right in the middle of the aftermath of, COVID still going on. People are getting jabbed up, if I have the timeline right. So from Homeland to Homeland and Border Patrol, okay, bunch of people get the email. Please be advised, FBI New York requested that we do not stop the subject below. Let this dude come right into the country. Don't ask him anything. Please contact me if you have any questions. Deputy Chief Officer, Customs and Border Protection. They had a whole packet here. Here's more. Okay, please disregard the request for inspection. The subject will be sent to the blank for any request. And before that, this was the request for an exam from the terrorist group. They said, Peter Daszak, this was what they got, and then they disregarded it. He's scheduled to travel from DOH to JFK on February 5th. They had this guy pinned down. Background on him, born 1965, full report, president of EcoHealth Alliance, scientific research focused on viruses, bats as viruses and reservoirs for viruses. Daszak is part of the WHO, also a scam organization. They also are affiliated with Batwoman, Zhangli Shi. Also have been working with her, Bat Lady, for more than 15 years. He's the principal investigator for the NIH grants, listing those grants here. 19 publications. He got a bunch of money paid for by Fauci. So he was asked publicly by the NIH to retrieve the original type specimen used by Wuhan for genetic analysis. He was also asked to explain several aspects of their collaboration, including cell phone data. Got a bunch of contracts. Much of the funding that he receives literally goes to gain-of-function research. This is like the briefing for the border people. Research involves experimentation on virulence of pathogens. In 2013, he was the co-author of another publication called Isolation and Characterization of a Bat SARS-like Coronavirus. And a follow-up article also said, Engineered bat virus stirs debate over risky research. Weird. Lab-made coronavirus related to SARS can infect human cells. Literally wrote an article in 2015. So here's what we request. We want an exam to include a review of all of his media. As soon as he gets here, sees his phones. Why was Daszak chosen to be the one on the World Health Organization team? Okay, the guy very likely responsible for engineering the virus is on the team to go identify how it all happened. Where in China did Daszak go? Where did he stay while there? Who was the point of contact? Did the team visit Wuhan? What areas did they go to? What did they inspect? Did the team visit the Chinese Center for CDC over there? Did they meet with any officials from the Chinese government? Did they collect any biological samples? Did he travel with them? Did he mail any samples back? Did he take any materials to China? Has he maintained contact with anybody at Wuhan? What was the purpose of the trip? Especially this one, January 4th through January 7th, 2021. Ask him all of these questions. NTC, National Targeting Center, and a security specialist says, I want to know all of those things. Boom. You get the images, right? Like you show up, this dude's wanted. If he shows up, stop this guy. And FBI cut it all off. He's from the UK, place of birth in the UK. Great. So this was referred over to someone. FBI says, do not stop the subject. No further action on this. They know exactly where he's coming from, where he's going, flying on Qatar Airways. traveling from Singapore Changi Airport, making stops, departing, picking up, and he was over there asked publicly by the NIH to retrieve specimens used by Wuhan and bring it back. What? He was also asked to explain several aspects of their collaboration. He called the requirements outrageous and is not going to comply with them. Yeah, why would he go get the evidence for them? Daszak and EcoHealth got a number of grants, more background on this type of research, saying that he has done gain-of-function research. It involves experimentation that tries to increase the transmissibility and virulence of pathogens, and it worked, okay? In 2013, he was also the co-author of other publications, and in another article said this actually is risky and it can infect humans. So during the inspection, it's hard to say if Daszak will be forthcoming with any of the information. All right, 10-4, got the notice and the brief, thank you. And then they rescind it, boom. He's now traveled to come in here, but we have rescinded the inspection request. He may be a subject of interest, though, for the FBI. So he's traveling back and forth. FBI covers up for him. A lot of this is much the same, explaining why they want the guy. He's affiliated with Bat Lady, been working with her for 15 years. NIH said, go get the sample and bring it on back. Same questions we just read through here. Any additional information besides this? A lot of this jointly funded by the Chinese. A lot of this funded by the NIH in the United States. Funded by other groups. Cross-neutralization of these antibodies. They wrote another article. This is, volume 60. Discovering rich gene pools. And once again, more questions listed here as these emails are being forwarded about. Now, this is curious. Hi, good morning. Agricultural specialist said, hi, good morning. Highlighted in the news, a 10-person team organized by the WHO is headed to China to research the origins. Wild. Like the people who created it are going to go figure out where it came from. Insane. A member of the team is Daszak. We've previously referred due to his connections to the Bat Lady in Wuhan. He was responsible for funding Wuhan with U.S. money from Fauci. He has a tentative flight scheduled for tomorrow. He's an extremely high person of interest. He should have a thorough inspection, either outbound or inbound. There is a real possibility that Daszak could hand carry or mail samples back from China. He has received criticism for his inclusion on the WHO team for a conflict of interest as he created it. It's like the person who does the murder leads the investigation of the murder. I don't know what happened here. This is crazy. EcoHealth Alliance and Daszak have been working with Bat Lady for years. Since 2014, funded a lot of her work, got a bunch of samples, blood samples and more, and they are subrecipients. So check this dude out, will you please? FBI said no. Here's more links, relevant news articles, gain-of-function research, other articles of interest here. And what a disaster. All right, so all that's happening. Rand Paul is saying, I want to know, was this dude intelligence? He just sent a letter, or reminded us about this letter. He re-upped it. He said, I need to know, was he a confidential source? Was he intelligence? Give me an answer, and hopefully we find out a lot more about this. But Rand will be dragging Fauci in for another congressional inquiry, and we'll see what he has to say. But Rand says, remember when Fauci thought that he could claim that the NIH wasn't doing this? We remember. We certainly do. Here's the fraudster, criminal murderer Fauci in Congress the last time.
The guidelines are very, very clear that you have to be dealing with a pathogen that clearly is shown and very likely to be highly transmissible in an uncontrollable way in humans and to have a high degree of morbidity and mortality, and that you do experiments to enhance that, hence the word EPPP, enhanced pathogens of
So when EcoHealth Alliance took the virus,
SHC
014, and combined it with WIV1 and caused a recombinant virus that doesn't exist in nature, and it made mice sicker, mice that had humanized cells, You're saying that that's not gain-of-function research?
According to the framework and guidelines.
So what you're doing is defining away gain-of-function. No. You're simply saying it doesn't exist because you changed the definition on the NIH website. This is terrible, and you're completely trying to escape the idea that we should do something about trying to prevent a pandemic from leaking from a lab. The preponderance of evidence now points towards this coming from the lab, and what you've done is change the definition on your website to try to cover your ass, basically.
Yep, and then he got a big fat pardon from Joe Biden for all of his crimes to immunize him for any accountability. But that pardon doesn't cover new lies that he sends to Congress. And so Rand Paul is going to be hauling him in next week, I believe, or sometime very soon. And so we're going to keep our eye on that story. See if Fauci, the scientist, invokes his Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination, or if he tells the truth and commits another lie, because we know he's not going to tell the truth. So we're going to keep our eye on this. This is still impacting people. There are people still suffering the consequences of what they did. They lied about it. They put the murderer in charge of the murder investigation and wrecked the planet as a result. And how many people have gone to jail for this? Virtually zero. There was the one other guy who got prosecuted for financial crimes. Otherwise, they've gotten away with it. And Fauci made a bunch of money from his stupid book sales, people dancing to his name like morons. But we're going to keep our eye on this. Fauci's a criminal. Hopefully justice comes soon. All right, beautiful friends. What a lovely day it has been. If you're just getting here, thank you for joining us. Quick recap on what we talked about, and then we'll hear from you. But Mikey Sherrill came out today and admitted, that there are non-citizens on the voter rolls, 6,600 of them out there in New Jersey. That list is probably much bigger than that, and a lot of people saying, it's not a voter glitch, okay? They're illegals. Somebody did it. Somebody was approving the forms as they made their way through the system. You can't just blame my computer for that. We also saw Keith Ellison is saying the more people get naturalized, the more voters the Democratic Party will have. We got people calling her out, a lot of people demanding the SAVE Act get passed. And of course, we want to see that all happen. Then we had a big win in the Second Circuit. Another lower level district court judge just got slapped down for saying that non-citizens have extra due process rights, that they can come and file claims in Article 3 courts to escape consequences that are imposed upon them in immigration land. Not going to happen anymore. And a big victory on this. And so this dude, Mahdi, can start to pack his bags and go back into immigration custody. Read through the decision, heard from the president, talked about this prosecutor who is seemingly just disgusting, like one of the worst, sleeping with defense lawyers, sleeping with defendants, and then sleeping with illegal aliens, all in one complaint. And then absconding wanted illegal alien felons, giving them title to her car and title to Lord knows what else, and is now presumably under criminal investigation as a result, thrown out of her office. And the state AG is now saying she's committed multiple crimes. Then lastly, we got some updates and some roundup on what's going on in COVID world. Rand Paul releasing a bunch of text messages, internal Slack messages, and also giving us evidence now that the FBI literally covered up for Daszak to allow him to come to and fro, exercising, their jurisdiction. We're the FBI here. We're in charge of this investigation. And not allowing Border Patrol to ask Daszak these very important questions as he was the murderer investigating the murder to and from China, maybe bringing samples with him. Who knows? But it's been a lovely stream. And of course, now, my friends, it is time to hear from you. And let's see what you have to say about all of this and more. What a lovely day it has been. I see Winning Reality is here. Good to see you, Winning Reality. Thank you, Muffin Rando and John, for clipping for us. Amazing. Thank you for doing that. Bonnie's here. What's going on, Bonnie? We've got E. Texley, Dark Rogue in the house. Very nice to see everybody. Thank you guys for being here and for your support on the day. Afuera, get on out of here. You're a guest in our country. You don't get to do whatever you want, and then claim your constitutional rights have been violated. Hey, not a Fed, what's up? Yeah, we're talking about Murkowski, who is backstabbing America because of rural voters, just like Democrats are like backstabbing America because of women and black people and people who can't go get IDs or something. Not a Fed. I am actually very impressed with Murkowski ensuring her 106% registered voters in Alaska aren't disenfranchised question. 593 registered voters with only 557,000 voting age population? Well, that doesn't make sense. Excluding non-citizens and felons. I love how AI refers to illegals and felons as disenfranchised. Yeah, that's amazing. Explains why she doesn't want the SAVE Act, along with ranked choice voting up there. She's a shoo-in from Not a Fed. That's a great report. So that's what they say there? 593 registered voters, and the voter registration rate often exceeds 100% due to high mobility, automatic registration, and the permanent fund dividend. Wow. So that's incredible. So 106% registered voters. That makes all the sense in the world. She wants the grift to continue. Any oversight will flesh those numbers out, and she can't allow that. Otherwise, she may not win again. Thank you for that update. Very good report on that. Not a Fed. Thank you for that. Hey, Dark Rogue. What's up, Dark Rogue? Thank you for being a member for 14 months. That's coming up on 2 babies. We appreciate you. I hope all is well, Rob. Still trying to catch up. Well, we're glad you're here, Dark Rogue. Take your time. Don't go too quickly. You might get a headache here. So glad you're here. Thanks for being here for 14 months and for being a member and supporting all of our work. E. Texley, what's up? Good to see you. Oddly enough, California took off the flag for persons not eligible to vote from their driver's license application in January 17. Eric Holder had recently done some consulting work for them. Took off their flag for persons not eligible to vote for their driver's license application. So that's interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting story. Yeah, and it's mass voter enfranchisement. If you witness potential election fraud, we want to hear from you. From Bill Esseley. Don't send rumors or other things. Thank you for that report from E. Texley. Yeah, California's filled with fraud. Hey, Off-Label Pod, what's going on? They admit fraud, but they still say it's Trump's fault? Man, the stupidity. Sorry can't have a long judiciary markup on making border protection permanent. Sorry can't stay. Oh, Off-Label Pod, voice of the people. You're going to be covering that? Amazing. Yeah, they're talking about making Trump's border wall and border protection permanent, and they're marking up bills for that. Off-Label Podcast is covering that right next door on YouTube and Rumble. Have a great stream. And yeah, the gall. You're literally admitting there's voter fraud in the system, and you're blaming Trump for saying there's voter fraud in the system. Do you even compute in your brain? Do you even have anything functional up there? Or do you just do Democrat talking points? Bonnie, regardless, they need to go after the 400 who did vote. Registered by accident is one thing. Actually voting is different. Bye-bye every person who voted. Totally with you on that, Bonnie. And she didn't really address that. We didn't listen to the full press briefing here together because you can only take so much of her insanity. But are they going to prosecute them? Are they going to disqualify those votes? Is there going to be any repercussion for the people who facilitated that fraud? No, it's just a glitch. And we fixed it, okay? So leave us alone. And there's no more fraud anywhere. So don't charge us, let's just have elections now. But I'm with you on that, Bonnie. I got a lot more questions than before. And that's the main benefit of admitting that, is you crack it. Oh, you admitted it. So now, since that's true, something else had to lead to this truth. Either the glitch was endorsed and accepted, or somebody had a responsibility to check and they didn't. Maybe willful negligence. Maybe they didn't make it happen on purpose, but they let it happen on purpose. And so there's criminal intentionality behind that. Or maybe it's worse. Maybe it was actually fraud by design. And then somebody started to blow the whistle about it. Then they had to address it. Probably more like that. It was going to become a bigger issue, so they had to get ahead of it in order to stop it from spiraling out of control. It's a limited hangout. We have identified one little tiny problem, but everything else is fine. And so leave us alone. But I'm with you, Bonnie. And yeah, all of them, we've covered many cases here. If you vote, you're not a citizen, they ask about that on the N400, and it should disqualify you from being a resident. You should not get permanent status. Definitely should not get citizenship for violating our sovereignty. Dark Rogue, what's up? Hey, you should check out what a Superior Court judge said in a case about the prosecutor in Indianapolis, Ryan Mears. Real Soviet-style violation of constitutional rights. Can't link in the super chat. Ryan Mears. All right, let me cue that one up. I'll take a look at it when we're done here. Ryan Mears. Any quick news stories? Indiana Lieutenant Governor suggests that Marion County prosecutor should be an appointed position. Something about a baseless search. Faces a Republican challenger. Judge drops broad Ripple bar case after an unconstitutional search. I'll take a look at that. Thank you, Dark Rogue, for the nice donation today. He wasn't sleeping with his clients, was he? Or his opposing party? Yeah. Well, maybe he was. I'll have to look into that. Thank you, Dark Rogue. Appreciate the donation, my man. Thank you for being here and for being a member. Hey, Stephen Montplaisir, what's up? Software glitches. The president needs to declare a national emergency. It is merited. Yeah, I thought the machines were fine. There were no problems with the machines. Oh, it's a software glitch. Yeah. Just like when all of the chain of custody problems happened in Georgia. It's all just oversight, administrative error. Always explainable by a mistake. And a mistake means there's no intentionality behind it. And so no one can go to jail. Always very convenient. Not obviously the case. Bonnie, IDEMIA operates in New Jersey primarily as the state's official background check and biometric vendor via its IdentGo brand and as a software and systems contractor for state agencies like the Motor Vehicle Commission. From their website, IDEMIA's DMV footprint is the leading provider of driver's license, ID issuance, enrollment, biometric, and secure credential systems. It claims to serve 35 driver's license customers, states, and agencies that issue the majority of licenses. Weird. So almost like their systems are probably pretty good. And she didn't identify them, and I wish she did, because then they could come out and say, we didn't screw it up, you guys did. Like, don't blame us, we're a vendor. We do our jobs, you're the government, you failed your jobs. So somebody on your end had the problem. But if it's just a glitch, there's no further inquiry required. We just move on, forget about it, and stop asking questions. Hey, liberty or death, what's up? Good to see you, Bonnie. Nice to have you back in the chat. The Democrat refusal to vote for the SAVE Act when 85% of Americans want to have the ID to vote reminds me of the movie The Patriot. Great movie. When Mel Gibson said, an elected legislature can trample rights just as easily as a king can. Man, I hope people are waking up to this kind of thing. Great film. We saw Young Washington over the weekend. Great film. A lot of fun. Shout out to George Washington. He was the man. But we were talking about The Patriot after that. I'm like, remember that? Like, that was a good one. Like, Patriot was good, and this was like a good follow-up to that. We want more of those movies. It was great. Hey, liberty or death, draft Rob 2028. The position that I want is to be the chief headlocker in Congress. I got to work on my skills a bit, but I want to be the chief headlocker. I don't know if that's Speaker of the House or President of the Senate. I'd have to be VP for that, so it's a pretty high position. But maybe I can just form a committee or something. I'll work on it. We got to workshop that. But thank you for the endorsement, liberty or death. We'll get things done as chief headlocker. Tony Hay Munkets, what's up? Hey. It's the Munkets. Great to see you, Tony Hay. Thank you for being here for 39 months, my friend. That is a long time. Multiple babies, and we've seen a lot together. Hey, it's the Munkets in the house. Hey, Scott Hotved, what's up? Hey, like the stream, 6 months as a member. Thank you for that, Scott. Great to have you here for 6 months, 2/3 of the way there. And thanks for the likes, my friends, and for the reminder there, Scott. I'd rather be skiing. I should have taken a left at Albuquerque. I hope you're not lost, yeah. Hope you're not lost. I'd rather be skiing. 34 months. You're amazing. I'd rather be skiing. We appreciate that. And Dark Rogue, what's up? Oh, it's not working. I sent you the link in X. YouTube is having a hissy fit when I even list the name of the news station in a super chat. The link is from the talk radio station in my city. It's a must see from Dark Rogue. Amazing, Dark Rogue. All right, let's see. Let's see if we can grab it and see kind of what we're dealing with here. And where is this one? Loading. Loading. Why am I not seeing it? That's not you. Aha. There it is. Oh my goodness. Look at these messages. Here's the link. Got that. Okay, WIBC. All right. All right, we'll put a pin in this one because now it's not loading appropriately for me. Judge dismissed 27 felony tax charges against a businessman. Someone violated multiple laws. All right, I've got it queued up. Yeah, and for some reason it's loading weird. Here's what I'm seeing right here. It's kind of loading weird. But I got it, Dark Rogue. Thanks for sending it over. And now I've got your messages loaded up. Thank you, my man. We appreciate that. I'll take a look at that as soon as we're done here. Thank you, Dark Rogue. We'll probably come back to that. Hey, Lilu Dallas, Multipass. In the house. Great film. One of the best of all time, The Fifth Element. Seen it maybe 100 times. Love it. I just wanted to say how much I truly appreciate your clear ability to communicate, your work ethic, and your morality and your beliefs. Lilu, it is clear every day that you have a good heart. I got a good mama. I take no credit for it. I got a good mama, and I love Jesus. May God bless your family and your impending pitter-patter of little feet. Hey, thank you, Lilu. Thank you, first of all, for the very nice donation. Super generous of you, and it's great to see you. It's been a while since we've had you in the chat. Lilu Dallas, Multipass in the house. And our baby's coming soon. We just had a quick baby update. We just went to our appointment today. Everything's good. Baby's heartbeat is just bumping away. Today, we're like ready for this thing to drop at any moment. And here's the deal. Baby's heartbeat, 130 to 140. Baby measurements, they're saying the baby might be moving down into the pelvis a little bit. And we talked about, what happens if we get to like 41, 42 weeks. Otherwise, things are looking good. They poked everywhere and felt everything. Like, you guys are good, man. So just hang tight. So we're going to just wait for that little creature to get ready. We're going to start talking to it. Okay, it's about time. Get ready. Start packing your bags or whatever you got to do inside there, little creature. And we'll see you soon. So thank you, Lilu Dallas. We're super excited about that. So any minute, any day now, basically any day. We're looking forward to it. Thank you, Lilu. Really great to see you back. Thanks for, again, the nice donation. And Biology, what's up, Biology? Always wins. It does. Bringing in 5 new members. This morning, we had a jam-in members-only morning stream as well. So we had some fun this morning. What did we talk about? I think we had 4 segments this morning. Oh, Biden got crushed in his audio fight. That was a great one. Harvard communists are being probed. Arizona's secretary just got sued over illegal election signatures. And we covered that illegal alien who's suing Trump for $75 million. Wild. We had 4 jam-in segments this morning. We'll have segments on those coming out later. But if you want to join us for those conversations, thanks for becoming a member. We've also got Jeffrey Clark is joining us on the members-only morning stream on Friday. And so if you want to be live with us for that, come join up. We'd love to see you there on YouTube or on Locals. And these 5 people will be there. Sat Miner, what's up, Kel? We got, hey, Michelle Parsons, good to see you. Having some bison burgers today. Amazing. JB in the house and Bees in the trap, along with Connie McDonald, all gifted members, courtesy of Biology Always Wins. Thank you, Biology, for bringing our new friends in. Amazing. We've also got Liberty is here, studying for the bar exam. And I think that's next week. Shout out to all of our bar exam takers out there. You guys are going to crush it. Go in with tremendous confidence and it will emerge. Those answers will pop into your brains. Liberty, this is going to be fun now. Attorneys in Houston are filing motions in district court stating that the 3 who were in the car with the illegal alien, Lorenzo, the one who got shot after turning his car into a battering ram in an effort not to get deported here in Houston, are being detained illegally. Oh, they are illegal as well. Yeah, so again, in other words, that precedent, right? You're illegal, you're in removal proceedings, file your complaints, go through that process, and you're not allowed now to just bypass that and go cry to some leftist judge to say I'm being illegally detained. That pattern is emerging. Thank you, Liberty. Keep that book going, my man. Hey, Dark Rogue. Thank you, Dark Rogue, for sending these ones in. Dark Rogue, very generous of you today. Thank you for all of these. Blue Curtain Burner in the house. Sindero Say. What's up? Darac Livingston. We got Sandra Palacio. CC Reagan. We got Tasty Tradecom. What's up, Kelly Flynn? Jess in Case. We got Wolfram. JQ We Not Me. Jackie Moorbacher. What's up? Thin Blue Line. We got Eileen Thunderball McGillicuddy. We got Jimmy Stuffitz. What's up, C-Pow? Melland Randy. That Prince Girl. Crystal Quaint. And Mark Stoney. All gifted memberships courtesy of Dark Rogue OG in the house. Thank you, Dark Rogue. Very nice of you to send these in. Hopefully we see everybody tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern time, for our members only stream. Hey, what's going on, Sharpie Guy? Rob, we seem to be completely outnumbered on any and all decency. What should we collectively do to overcome? Tell us some of your lawyerly wisdom. No, I find myself in short circuitville, brother. My plan isn't ideal at all. LOL. Well, I don't know what your plan is there. Is to like go off grid and hole up in a bunker somewhere? May not be a bad idea. So, Sharpie Guy, we have to keep speaking the truth. We have to keep persevering in the face of all of this darkness that's out in the world. Every time there's some darkness, we'll emerge. We're on the side of truth and light. And let us never forget that the opponents of freedom have ideologies that are self-destructive. They surge and then they wane, and then they surge and then they wane. But by design, an ideology that is totalitarian in nature, that says that somebody needs to control and make everything equal, it always devolves into a tyranny, and then the tyranny ultimately deletes itself, generally speaking. Even like, communist China and stuff, like there's some capitalism elements over there in a tremendous way, because they realize that their systems really just don't work. So stay the course, we're going to win. And we should have some fun while we're doing it. And Liberty, hey man, you've been in DC a minute now. How is your Trump impression coming along? I wouldn't say very good. I don't really work on it. It's hard to imitate the man. He's the man. So we kind of leave him alone. The only other impressions that we do are Trey Gowdy and Mitch McConnell. But Mitch McConnell might be dead, so I don't know how appropriate that one is either. But thank you, Liberty. I'll have to work on it, I suppose. Hey, what's going on, Dark Rogue? Man, another one, Dark Rogue. Rob, what I've learned the last few years is that there doesn't seem to be any real meat in these checks and balances. That's right. I think that's right. I thought about a corrupt DOJ and FBI. Who has the power to bring them to justice? Congress? Yeah, Congress is really pathetic. It's Article 1. They're supposed to be the most powerful branch. They've got most of the articulated powers in their branch, and they've acquiesced completely. It's kind of like lowest common denominator, right? Everything kind of devolves into the mean. Everything becomes normal. Congress has elected some of the worst people in the world to actually govern us. We've elected them ultimately. And I really think that large portions of them are just bought off. They're just kind of placeholders. Lindsey Graham drops out. It's like Indiana Jones' head on the crystal, whatever that is. Swap him out with his sister. Whatever. It's the same thing. No real difference between them. And the problem is that when you then have 435 Congress people, it's like a small Senate. And so just like you can control 100 senators, you can also control 435 House reps. So representation ultimately goes away. They're all sort of in one power structure. The whole thing is controlled. They've divested themselves of any of their checks and balances and their authority. And it has become a real lethargic, neutered, emasculated, eunuch-style branch of government, which is a real problem. So ultimately, it's not working as it's designed. I think that it's, better than the alternative. But at the moment, what do you do? I think that, at some point, the generational shift is going to happen. A lot of these people who've been there for a long time are going to go. There will be changes, whether they're for the better or not remains to be seen. But the checks and balances thing, right? Nobody's checking anybody. Like, you have a strong executive right now. Congress won't do anything, evidently, unless the Democrats are in charge. Then it becomes largely tyrannical. The judiciary won't check themselves. And the system works with strong checks and balances. We really want Congress to be strong and effective so that, iron sharpens iron, ambition pitted against ambition, like James Madison said in Federalist 51. You have to have these branches fighting with each other, and the nation gets stronger as a result. But Congress just hasn't done that. And at some point, maybe they will. Maybe they will. I hope so. But we got to get some much better people in there. Thank you, Dark Rogue. Bill Tong is here. Do you enjoy your Bill Tong USA order? Of course you did. Please leave a review when placing your next order. Go to BillTongUSA.com. It helps others find us, and it means a lot to our small business. At BillTongUSA.com, you can also use code Robert, and you'll save 10% off on your next order, and leave a review. Hey, Texan Knock. What's up, Texan Knock? Almost one full term here. Marxism requires so much deception and subterfuge. How can anyone have faith in it if implemented? Well, I think they're bought into the fantasy. It's this concept that, you're wronged. People need to identify with a cause. And generally, it comes in the form of spirituality for most people on the planet. Most people also want families. Most people want, I think, or did, want to create some secular life that is beneficial to them, but also to have a spiritual life. Communism replaces a lot of that, right? It's very anti-Christian in general. In fact, Karl Marx, like the two C's that he hated were Christianity and capitalism. Hated both of those things. So you replace that spirituality, which I think is really kind of a natural, inherent part of the human existence, replace it with something else where the government becomes your God. Mom Donnie's now talking about like universal child care, okay? Like the government becomes the parent. The families are neutered. Everybody is broken apart. It's about transgression and about subversion and really about desecration. Okay, the norms of society need to be transgressed. And there's this power that comes from the desecration of something else. Okay, people feel like, you know what? I have no meaning or purpose in my life, but if I can desecrate society's norms by going around and flapping my genitals on the streets of San Francisco, I'm desecrating those norms. I'm transgressing the standards in society. And that, for people like that, who have no other spirituality or have no other meaning or purpose in their life, feel power from that process. They feel like they're joining something. Look at what I can do. Nobody could do this before, but I'm liberated now. So that gives them this internal power. And that type of power is very attractive to people because they don't have it through other mechanisms. So then they bundle together and they create their liberation ideology. They, perpetual victims. They have to desecrate and transgress society in order to achieve that power. And that line continues to move and move and move. And then they bundle up together and they become communists. But again, it's a self-defeating ideology, which is why we're going to win in the end. Congrats on the future, Mrs. Gouveia, that's about to be born. We got a girl vote in the House from Texan Knock. Amazing. Texan Knock in the House. Yeah. And so they don't feel deceived, right? They feel like they're being a part of a community that they have not been able to find elsewhere. And that's why we don't want to, abandon them completely. We want to show them the wrongs of their ways, bring them back into the spiritual fold, bring them back into a much better meaning and purpose of existence. Hey, loyal Taco Bell manager, certain that the cyclospora outbreak came from the farmer's market down the street. Absolutely outstanding. That's hilarious. Yeah, it's Fauci at the Taco Bell. Yeah, meanwhile, he made it. He crapped in everybody's lettuce. Sharpie guy. Hey, what was so hysterical about the prosecutor and the illegal is he was supposed to be heading back up to Mexico, presumably for the eventual hookup with her, and he was busted up north of Missouri, probably hooking up with his original chica. How completely stupid is she? You said it right, Rob. There are people in prison because of her. Big question. Can defendants bring her lack of candor up for an appeal? Yeah, it's a great question. I would certainly be looking into it. You have a situation like this, you're a defense lawyer in the region, and you have a major ethical problem with anybody, crime lab technician, police officer. You know, like when a cop has an ethical problem, everybody sends emails in the defense bar. Hey, this cop just got busted for a thing. Check your cases. Everybody goes, oh, cop whatever, Officer Nelson. You go back, you check all your files, you pull all your files that have Officer Nelson as the stop officer. So same thing with this prosecutor. Any case that she touched, and she really ran the whole office, I think would now be under scrutiny. And then you'd make your claim on a fact by fact, case by case basis. But certainly it's being looked at. Like, what did she do? What type of bias was injected into your proceedings as a result of this disgusting prosecutor? Hey, King of Biltong, also, check out our Rumble channel for all things do-it-yourself. Biltong, cool American history, streaming 9 a.m. Eastern time. Amazing in the mornings, 8 a.m. Central. It's called Rustic Ranch on Rumble. And hopefully, Biltong, hopefully you guys are also doing that on YouTube too. If you're going to be building on Rumble, I'd also encourage you to build on YouTube. So make sure you're doing that as well. But check it out, Rustic Ranch over on the Rumbles. Hey, I'm Picking Cute. What the hell is with the jurisprudence of law enforcement careers that seem to breed rabbit hormonal imbalances and nymphomania? I've read several that you haven't even covered. One was a judge and a prosecutor. I can never look at the courthouse the same. I know, like the gavel and the, yeah. Maybe you should turn your license in. It might be contagious. You need to be safe. No, we're pretty monogamous here. We have a very, active and fulfilling life. And so not worried about that. And, high energy, I think is, appropriate in our beautiful relationship. Sharpie guy. Hey, burner today, Rob. Kazakhstan and Fauci dang near killed me and did in fact kill several of my friends and relatives. Exactly. Rob, where does this go from here? Will they be held accountable? This whole deal has me fuming angrily. What say you? Well, I sure hope so there, Sharpie guy. So Rand Paul is going to be bringing in Fauci for a full conversation, I think next week. We probably will stream that one live. I'm still fuming mad about COVID. I mean, we don't talk about it a ton here because everybody's kind of moved on, but this whole show was birthed out of COVID. I was so furious about what was happening that we just started a live stream. So, because I couldn't take it anymore. I felt like I was in an insane asylum. All my friends were like, you're going to die. So anyway, it's not so friendly anymore, but that's the point. So hopefully there is justice coming and we're going to stay on it. Thank you, Sharpie guy, for the dono. Not a Fed. Hey, great show again. Not sure if you covered this before, but Grassley now has a ventriloquist like McConnell. The guy over his right shoulder seems to know how Grassley is going to respond and is very intent and nervous about the senator saying what he was told to say correctly. Full video link below if you want to watch after the show. Curious on your thoughts. This is the third staffer now that I've seen do this in various hearings. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I've seen that too. It happens a lot, not just with Grassley, but they're just like operated, like with the hand in the back. Just say this there. And they go, oh yeah, we saw that with someone else. I'm like, what is he doing? A lot of times they'll whisper over, don't forget this point or whatever. Okay. But sometimes it does feel like they're just being operated like those robots at Disneyland. Thank you for that. I'll cue that one up as well. We appreciate that. Thank you for sending that. Not a Fed. May hit that tomorrow morning. Wounds Russ. I have been a healthcare provider since the late 70s. Fauci's crimes go way back. Yeah, right, with the AIDS stuff. This guy's been doing it forever. And they paraded him around like he was Father Science, Holy Fauci. It was sick. It was a sick time. I'm still burning mad about it. So hopefully, and then he got pardoned. Why did he get pardoned if he's so innocent? Hey, thank you for that. Wounds Russ, thank you for staying on it as well. Thanks for watching over on Rumble and for joining us over there. Shout out to our friends on Rumble. Matt Reese is also over there. Hey, went to vote in Mesa, Arizona yesterday. They've got primaries tonight. Printer wasn't working right. Ballots got voided. When trying to recheck in, it said I already voted. Man, Matt, thank you for that report. Yeah, so I'm going to keep my eye on the Arizona elections tonight. Some big ones. I think Biggs is in the running and some others. So Matt, thank you for the heads up on that. I'm going to take a look at that, and then maybe we'll see what the fallout is tomorrow on that. But I've seen reports. I've seen other reports saying they got, some problems, and then the reports are fixed. You never really know. So I appreciate you taking the moment to send that over to us. I'm P. Picking Q. Good to see you. If they disbar Miss Nasty Nympho, yeah, she was nasty. She could hang a red light over her house and open a house of ill repute. Yeah, it could be a law office. I've read madams rake it in, except they don't partake in their trash product. Total conflict of interest. Total conundrum. Yeah, it's disgusting. Thank you on P. Picking Q. Darla Shumate. Hey, it would be interesting to see if the software had a default setting for citizenship on by default, but someone on the New Jersey side had to decide what the default selection should be. Yeah, and did that just happen in June 23? Like it was not on that setting and then something happened in June 23 that turned the setting on? Okay, how'd that happen? Maybe we should have an investigation into that. Was it always that way? Okay, then when did the software get installed? When was that system flipped on? Let's go all the way back then. Why'd you stop counting then in June 23? A lot of questions about it. And if it was flipped on, who did it? Why did they do it? When did they do it? What's their current position there? Have they been interviewed? Have they been investigated? Was somebody else supposed to follow up on that? Is there one person responsible for that setting in the entire state? Lots of questions, Darla. And we hope to get the answers on that. So hopefully, again, this is just the beginning. The DOJ says, oop, perfect. They made a mistake. They made an error. They made an admission. They never do that. And so now we can ask a whole bunch of additional questions. Hey, Winning Reality, yeah, there are bugs, features, user errors, and outages. There is no such thing as a glitch. A glitch is a term that people use to cover up for the real root cause. Yeah, and to say, basically deflect any accountability. Okay, like if it's a feature, then a feature could be something that is turned on or off. There's a person that's responsible for the activation of the feature. A bug is a mistake in the system. Was it a bug? If it was, does the main vendor, so it's a vendor problem. The vendor apparently is a national vendor. Do you update your software to fix the bugs? Do they know about this? Are these bugs also evident in other state systems that are validating non-citizens as legitimate voters? If it's a user error that happened for an entire year, who was the user? Nobody wants to label it as one of those things because it would beg the question and spark further investigation. Rather, it's a glitch. What was it exactly? Don't ask any questions. We fixed it. Let's move on. The rest of the list is fine. Trust us. And Trump's a bad man. Yeah. Thank you, Winning Reality. Good to see you. Larry, hey, here's a dumb question. Can Fauci plead the fifth if he has been pardoned? I would argue that yes, he can, because the pardon covers him up through the end of Biden's power, right? So it's from the end of Joe Biden's power relating all the way back to when Biden granted the pardon to, which I think was back in like 2014, which goes all the way back into the Ukraine stuff. So it's a long pardon, but these would be new crimes. Okay, so if he goes and lies to Congress right now, that's a new crime. So he could say, now I'm under investigation. I think I'm under investigation. And I think he's right. Rand Paul is trying to pin him down. He's trying to pull at his ego. Fauci will come out and say, I'm innocent. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm totally honest and honorable. Or do the safe thing, which his defense attorneys are screaming at him to do, which is to not say anything. And we've seen that before. Like Act Blue is saying that. Southern Poverty Law Center is also saying that. There's also questions about the validity of the pardon, but that's a separate issue, I think. Could you get Fauci on his prior bad actions from before the pardon, the time where the pardon covers, based on the invalidity of the pardon? Joe Biden's brain is gone. His audio tapes are going to come out from 2017 with Wanitzer. Maybe that invalidates that action. It's an auto pen pardon, so the chain of custody about the approval process is all invalidated. But these would be new crimes. And so just like Southern Poverty Law Center or just like Act Blue, just plead the fifth, don't say anything. And Rand Paul will get frustrated and Fauci will avoid criminal liability. But maybe his ego won't let him do that. And he hates Rand Paul because Rand Paul has his number. Rand Paul knows exactly what he's done. Fauci knows he knows what he's done. So maybe he'll try to talk his way out of it and then incriminate himself. Hey, Real Life, 35 months as a membo. Real Life in the house. Great show as usual, Rob. Thank you, Real Life. Thank you for being here for 35 months. That is a long time, and we're happy to have you here for all of that time, Real Life. Yeah, and just Don, he thinks he's smarter than Rand Paul. I doubt he'll plead the fifth. You might be right? That's kind of the gamble. That's what we hope. I hope you're absolutely right. Run your mouth there, Fauci. Explain yourself. Tell us how honorable you are and how innocent you are. And walk us through all the mechanics so that we can indict you. Amy Ann, wow, Harmeet has had a major... Oh, she looks great. Yeah, Harmeet looks amazing, doesn't she, Amy Ann? Bonnie, I think they need to hold a cloture vote anyways. Get it on the record. Who is who? Thune can always submit the cloture vote again after the election. So in other words, get a vote on the SAVE Act one way or another, even if they can't get it passed at this current moment. Put them on the record. The Veil, is it rude to ask a simple question? Why do we have massage parlors or brothels when there are prosecutors and judges who do that for you? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. If you're like in Ray County, you hear about this prosecutor, you're like, I'm going to go commit some crimes. Heck yeah. Let's go traffic in some drugs because the prosecutor will sleep with us. Did our nation truly do things backwards? I mean, after all, she's paid by the government funds. Doesn't that mean brothels are legal now? Hey, Genoa, China asserted COVID started in America back in 2020. Yeah, I mean, some of the funding and the researchers came from America, but I'm not so sure about that. But thank you, Genoa. Makes sense. They'll blame us. I'm sure we're blaming them. Seems like they were both sides were complicit in it. Barry, Rob, Fauci was a big failure for HIV back in the day. He was crooked back then. When he reappeared, I was concerned and horrified. I followed that back then. And Liberty says, you want to be the chief headlocker? I'll teach you Kung Fu for free. Amazing. Yeah, I don't know much Kung Fu. I used to wrestle in high school. So, I used to throw a pretty mean headlock. And then I did some mixed martial arts in college. And then I did some Brazilian jiu-jitsu off and on. So I'm pretty familiar with the headlock. But I could always bone up on my Kung Fu, especially if I'm going to be duking it out in Congress under legislative immunity, But we'll get some stuff passed, man. 100%. Go just start headlocking people. Peacefully, legally, under the color of law. America will be back in no time. Just got to put some elbow grease into it. All right, so friends, it's been a lovely stream. Thank you so much for hanging with us. We covered a lot of good ground. We talked even more this morning. And so we'll get some of those segments out coming soon. Shout out to our amazing mods and memesmiths. Lionheart, what's up, says every computer requires a login and a password, even at the library. So the glitch should be easily trackable. 100% right. What's up, Neuro D, man? Thank you, Neuro D, for linking over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com, where we do our members only streams as well as on YouTube. And college earnings. Wow, look at that. Electrical engineering. Dang. Yeah, see how lawyers not in this list? Yeah, exactly right. Pfft, stupid. It's too many lawyers. We're good. So anyways, all right, friends, it's been a lovely stream. We'll pause. It's a peaceful headlock. You're not trying to kill each other. You've ever been put in a headlock, sometimes it is very peaceful. You're like, oh, I'm blacking out right now. Wow, this is nice. And then you realize you're out. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful thing. All right, so we'll pause here on the evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Big shout outs to our mods and memesmiths.
Ms. Hoyer.
That's the Grassley clip. Jeff Mack, what's up, Jeff? Thank you for rating our stream. Shout out to our friends from Jeff Mack's channel. Although we're wrapping it up over here. We're going to send you over to Jim Tells You if you're on YouTube. And then we're going to come back tomorrow to get into it all again. Before we do, big thank yous to our amazing mods and memesmiths. We got Donut Mind Me, What's Happening to Muffin Rando. Thank you, gentlemen, for clipping for us. John in the house. We got K Bean, we got Carrie B, we got Neuro D. You saw him and Janek and Dog Digger over on the Rumble. We got Geegum Geegum, Just Rhonda, and Elliot Dockmaster, keeping things nice and orderly around here. But my friends, it's been a lovely evening. Thank you for joining us. Lots to get to this week. You can feel it in your bones. Elections are coming up upon us. And so thank you for coming back tomorrow to get into it again with us, because in order to do all of this appropriately, we need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful evening. Sleep very, very well. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. You brought the heat with every chat and line. Together we expose corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers. Truth on our side. Watching the watchers. We won't be denied. Watching the watchers. Eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news, but here we see through